The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. What is it? We don't know. The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. Here we go, it's the Gun Shop Show.
Cheng, Cheng, Cheng. We are going to be joined by Top Shot champion of season 4. So that's History Channel's Top Shot.
2012.
Chris Cheng. Who's a very interesting dude in the Second Amendment space. And we're going to have a killer gun shop show for you today.
I'm putting on, I'm going for all the bells and whistles. I'm doing it all.
Yeah?
All of it?
Yep, wore my gear.
Yep.
Got my gear.
Look at me. Look at my gear.
You got your gear?
Looking
wow. Look like you got your...
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
Secret. Secret.
I went with the traditional...
Uh-oh.
You can't even see it because it's not on camera. I don't know
we
what
haven't
I'm
gotten
doing.
to that
I don't know what I'm doing.
yet.
So you've tuned into your radio, and you are enjoying a nice, soothing Hinkle's home inside and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And you're looking at ways to improve your backyard and your life.
Yep.
And you accidentally left the dial on a little too long.
Yep, and here you are. We're going to tell you what you can do with that backyard.
And what you're hearing is the voice of yours truly, owner of Liberty Tree Guns. My name is Eli Bruton.
He's hot.
And this is the Gun Shop Show.
That's right.
That's true.
Coming to you from a real live gun shop.
Not a fake one.
Not that Barbie-sized one.
And these other melodious voices that you hear
That's so
coming over the
smooth.
dials. One of them, he is here with the primary objective of making the show possible.
And pushing buttons.
Pushing buttons,
Making things happen.
connecting wires. I don't know all the
Touching
details,
dials.
but I assume clicking stuff,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, clicking.
turning
That's the
knobs,
thing. Yep.
sliding sliders.
Yep, moving microphones.
Yep.
And then
Plugging
on
stuff
top
in.
of all that, we let him have a microphone.
Oh, yeah, baby.
And that's our producer, Mr. Trevor Smith.
Pushing
Say hi.
buttons, baby.
Oh, yeah. Got that
snap.
weird mouse. Got
Yeah.
that.
That's all the work.
Got that weird mouse.
Hello, everybody. Like
That's
to hear what
Trevor
that
Smith.
Nice,
Yep.
nice
And then
word
we
was.
have another guy here.
Oh, yeah.
And
Barely any widow's peak. He's got a beard.
Yeah.
for the audio only listener, imagine Fabio.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember
Imagine-
Fabio?
I remember Fabio.
Oh, I remember him.
Yes, all his hits.
So take Fabio, right?
Okay.
Your mental image.
Fabio.
You remember what Fabio looked like?
Oh, yeah.
Can you describe him, Trevor?
Amazing. Immaculate.
I'm thinking adjectives. Can you use
buff,
adjectives?
Muscular. How's that for an
Muscular,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hairy.
Tall.
A lot of hair. Very
Tall.
hairy.
flowing hair,
One enormous ear on the left side of his head.
and then shorten that a little.
Shorten. I'm dialing it back.
Change the hair color.
Yep.
Right.
Change the facial hair choice.
Yep. And
Change the personality.
Yep.
Make it look
Yes.
more Palestinian.
Change the
Yep.
name from Fabio.
Definitely more Palestinian.
Way more.
And change it to Logan Jones.
So
Ladies
in
and gentlemen-
essence, I am a short Palestinian Fabio.
Ladies
And no one
gentlemen,
does it better than you do.
That is Logan Jones.
And he's an actual grown man, by the way.
I'm a full-grown man. I don't
that's
know
a
why you're
real-
making that joke.
Real grown man.
It is. He's made it too many times.
I don't understand what's happening.
You know, it's
Grown
like
man.
it. You know, there's a limit to the number of those jokes. You know, like if it's a little true,
Yeah.
that's what makes it funny. So you can say it once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're like, but that's thinning out like your hairline.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and
Yeah.
then the next time it's like, but seriously, you're suffering from male pattern baldness.
You need to get that checked out.
And then the next thing is, you know, they're like, no, you're literally statistically less desirable by the opposite
just becomes
sex.
more factual.
You know, those Bosley treatments are not cheap.
Tell me about it.
So, Chris Cheng.
Yeah,
he's
a
coming
real
up on the
deal.
show. He's a real deal, and his some of you probably have seen as it's made the rounds. His testimony to the on the Senate floor in terms of gun control and how it's been used to unfairly target minority segments of American society. Just super fascinating guy and terrific shooter.
Yeah, self-taught too.
Literally top shot.
Is there any short clips of him shooting?
Oh, probably.
Why don't you look him up?
I'll look it up.
Why
I
don't
was
you look him
thinking
up?
about challenging him to a shooting competition.
Wow.
Just me versus him. See what happens.
I like it.
Why not?
Yeah. But I probably won't. I'll probably check it out.
I have a good idea for it.
Okay.
Both of you do it with a high-speed fan blowing your hair around.
Gotcha.
I think you would have an advantage, and that's probably the only way you would.
I
That's
don't.
the only way you would win.
You'd probably take him out, man. Probably take him out on that.
So while you look up that clip,
probably
I'm
not.
going to tell you about two exciting things.
Yeah.
One of them is the fact that we're giving away a gun today on the show.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. And it's a really cool gun. So
It's one of my personal favorites.
yeah, okay. So I've always been advocating, you've heard it here before, for the Heritage Rough Rider, right? It is a single action kind of cowboy style 22 plinker, and despite being really affordable, we've sold hundreds and hundreds.
Literally hundreds.
Literally hundreds. We buy them usually 100 at a time, if not less. And they make such a great addition to any gun collection because they're affordable, they're utilitarian, they're fun, they give you that cowboy feel. They're great for new shooters. They're pretty safe because they're single action. You're not going to inadvertently pull the trigger several times because you got to cock the hammer every time. So I've advocated many times. I've told the story about my dentist and his armadillo shooting habits, all of that. But Heritage came out with his especially cool version. What is the name of that model, Logan?
It is the Heritage Rough Rider Barkeep.
Barkeep.
And it is fantastic.
So
We love it.
it's got this little 2-inch barrel on it. It's a cutie pie, right? So, you know, single action, like I said, so you're going to cock that hammer every time you shoot it. So this thing's short, compact. There's videos of our longtime friend of the show, been a guest many times, 22 Plinkster. Actually, that's not true. See,
wait, you're
here's
right.
the thing. 22 Plinkster has been invited. In fact, when they said, hey, let's have a show, and I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's get a guest on. Who would be my favorite guest ever? I was like, let's get 22 Plinkster. Guess how many times we've gotten him?
I can't count on my
If you
hands
carry
and feet
the one,
how many
it's
times.
0.
0 times.
Yeah, so he's been invited numerous times. He even said
Twice.
that he would come on the show.
But he is a liar.
I
He's
think
dead.
he's just trying to save face there when he has saw numerous comments inviting him on the show.
Just kidding.
And it's okay. It doesn't hurt at all. I mean, it's not like
It's not like I'm bitter
we're
about
mortal
it, and
enemies
I'm
or
going to
anything,
call
no.
him names just
Yeah.
because my feelings are hurt.
Yeah.
or
What,
anything
hey,
like that.
remember that time that we were going to do a bit called 22 Stinkster?
Oh yeah, that was a good idea.
Yeah.
I
and
still
you're just
want to
gonna
do
be
that.
terrible at shooting.
It's just it's like an impression of him, same persona, same delivery of personality, but he's just horrible at shooting.
Yeah, he misses every time.
Still a great idea.
Something that we should mention, though, there is a video floating out there with yours truly and Mr. Rogan Jones doing the barkeep shooting stuff. Yep, that's the
Oh,
thing.
yeah, we did go
We made
shoot
a
that.
video.
Hey, roll the video of our next guest. This is Chris Cheng, Top Shot champion.
I'm going to put some volume on it. How about that? How about a little bit of audio?
Yeah, he's
Front sight. Now I'm ready to shoot. I'm going to place my trigger finger on the trigger. I'm going to take a breath.
That's back to basics.
I'm going to exhale, 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 and as I'm exhaling, I'm applying pressure to the trigger at the trough, or when I'm almost out of breath, break the shot. Now, one thing to notice, I'm going to break my left hand here. Notice that I've trapped the trigger. Now, part of shooting and marksmanship is all about efficiency of movement. So I'm going to release the pressure off the trigger until I feel a click right there. So the efficient part here is I didn't release and let my finger fly off the trigger, and I only moved my trigger finger as little as possible till I felt that reset. Gonna get my good grip back on and go through the whole process again. Align my sights. My sight picture is on target.
So needless to say, Chris Cheng is a very capable shooter. He wouldn't have been able to win History Channel's Top Shot award if not. And he's an advocate of competitive shooting. He's an advocate of gun rights. And we'll get into why he has a unique perspective on the Second Amendment when we come back from the break. But I want to remind you, regardless of your approach to the Second Amendment, some people watch this because they're casually into guns and they think they're fun and they think the show is funny. If that's true, this is for you. If you carry a gun for concealed carry every day for self-defense, this is especially for you. If you never carry a gun for self-defense, but you travel to other states to compete in competitive shooting events, then what I'm about to tell you is for you. That is getting a membership to something where I'm a card-carrying member. All of the people on the show, all of my staff are card-carrying members. That is U.S. Law Shield. They're our premier sponsor for a reason, because they believe in the things we do. You go to uslawshield.com to get full protection, legal defense for your self-defense. Use promo code LibertyTree, all one word. You'll get 2 months for free, so 14 months for the price of 12, and you'll get your rate locked in forever. uslawshield.com. Click join now. Use promo code LibertyTree. Support the show. Protect yourself for less than the cost of Netflix. Have an attorney that will represent you from moment one to the end of any court challenge. Stay with us on the Gun Shop Show. Hey, podcast listeners and live stream viewers. I wanted to let you know that the Gun Shop Show is made possible by our friends at Mid-America RV. Being in the customer service industry, I have a really high standard for how customers are treated. Mid-America RV does it right. I've got my RV through their dealership, and I've taken it all over the country. We made it to South Padre Island. We've gone to Colorado several times. And if you've ever owned an RV, you know there's a lot that comes with it. So who you get it from matters, and it's extremely important that you have support after the sale. They're located just outside of Carthage. They have a really vast inventory, and they are home of, I believe they call it a forever warranty. So I urge you, if you're in the market for one, to check them out. It's a really fun and can be very affordable way to get your trips in. So visit them at midamericarv.com. We appreciate their support of the Gun Shop Show. If you're in the market for a travel trailer or fifth wheel, check out Mid-America RV.
Our member's girlfriend is on her way to pick up her kids from her ex-husband's house. She asked our member to tag along because of her ex's temper. As they arrive at the home, her ex emerges yelling and gesturing. He approaches his ex-wife and grabs her, attempting to drag her inside. Fearing for her life, our member, a trained CHL holder, jumps out of the car with his gun drawn and demands the ex-husband release her. Seeing the gun, the assailant retreats. The situation then takes a bizarre turn as the assailant dials 911 to report our member. As a result of the aggressor's lies, our member was wrongfully arrested. Our member had to undergo lengthy legal proceedings. However, he was ultimately cleared of all charges.
Our evenings, or often on weekends, are spending Friday and Saturday nights on the deck with our friends. Before, everybody would be crowded. We could barely sit together. We were walking on top of each other if everybody was on the deck. Now there's plenty of room for everyone to roam around and relax comfortably and have plenty of space.
Specifically, I know that every post they bury to a certain depth with full concrete. They use 6x6 posts, strapping and hurricane strapping on everything. It's how I feel a deck should be built if it's going to be built right.
This just in. Huge cave found beneath the heart of the city. Spelunkers shared tales of an underground cavern system in Carthage, Missouri. Locals report the entrance to be at 10th and Garrison.
Cave Gang Pizza. Stop in and enjoy wings, wood-fire pizza made with local ingredients, and our full bar. Bring the whole gang and uncover a legend.
Hey there, We got your lab results back. It looks like you have a fever, and the only prescription is more Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. All gun control is racist. You've heard that before on the show, but we've never really fleshed out that statement. Our next guest has actually given expert testimony to the United States Senate on that topic. We're going to roll that video, and then we'll be joined by Chris Cheng. Trevor, go ahead and roll it.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Chris Cheng, and I'm honored to join you today representing myself and only myself. As a gay Asian American professional sports shooter, this hearing is very timely and essential to our national conversation on civil rights and our future as a peaceful nation. I'm here today to share my quintessential American story. In 2012, I earned the title of History Channel's Top Shot Season 4 champion. Now, only in America could a self-taught amateur shooter train and win $100,000 and a professional shooting contract. After this, I quit my job at Google and switched careers and focused on firearms, culture, and their role in American history. I earned a master's degree in policy studies from Middlebury College in 2006. Following my Top Shot win, I naturally wanted to research gun policy and history. But I was appalled to discover how gun control can be used as a tool of discrimination. While our black brothers and sisters have arguably experienced the most negative impacts of gun control through structural racism at the hands of the government, Asian Americans have also been negatively impacted. I will share two examples. First, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first federal law to explicitly prohibit the immigration of people of a particular nationality and set an extremely dangerous precedent for future xenophobic mandates. Second, in response to mounting pressures during World War II, Executive Order 9066 mandated that more than 110,000 innocent Japanese Americans were to be forcibly relocated to internment camps. This order stripped my Japanese ancestors of their rights and their civil liberties. The goal was to keep us unarmed, invisible, and silent. Neither the Chinese Exclusion Act nor the executive order was genuinely successful in increasing domestic safety. Neither will the gun control legislation under consideration. Why are these historic moments important for our conversation today? I'll explain. With a 149% increase in anti-Asian American violence over the past year, Asian Americans are flocking in droves to buy guns, many seeking to purchase their first firearm. There is a real need and imminent threat. We need to defend ourselves, not 3 days or 20 days from now, but right now. I encourage people to be their own first responder because there is no guarantee that help will arrive in time. Universal background checks will not help. I live in San Francisco, and if I want to give or sell a personal firearm to a friend or family member, they must wait 10 days. There should not be a timer delaying when an American wants to exercise their Second Amendment right or any other individual right. Every year, millions of Americans legally purchase firearms. In comparison, only a few thousand criminals or mentally ill individuals acquire guns and commit homicide. Will you let the criminal minority take away the rights of the law-abiding majority, rights which are supposed to be guaranteed to us by our Constitution? I'm against H.R. 8 and H.R. 1446 because they represent a threat to the safety of Asian Americans and all Americans who have an imminent need to defend themselves. Earlier, I spoke about the racist roots of gun control. But what's worse than systemic racist gun control policies? Poorly thought out gun control policies that will negatively impact Americans of all walks of life, all races, genders, and sexual orientations in America. I'll expand. I'm a gay American and have been happily married to my husband of 5.5 years. Today, we see a rise in attacks against Asian Americans, but tomorrow, I might be back here talking about the persistent, ongoing violence against LGBTQ Americans. I've lived through how the phrase gay virus to describe AIDS stokes the same fears and dehumanization elicited by the words Chinese virus. This derogatory language contributes to a less safe, less empathetic society. I'll continue speaking out against hate and violence in all forms, and I encourage all Americans to participate in what should be a simple, universal condemnation of hate and violence. We should not be afraid of saying that we will not tolerate it, that it is unacceptable, and that it must stop. At the root of our country's violence is not firearms. The root causes of human violence and hate are many: low self-esteem, lack of mental health resources, community, education, job opportunities, and a lack of humanity. Congress must focus on these actual causes of violence that will make America safer. Thank you for allowing me to address this committee on the importance of gun safety and education and condemn the brutality ravaging our communities today.
I want to welcome to the show Chris Cheng. What an interesting individual you are. I don't even know which one of these topics I want to start on, so I'll allow you. So many great things covered and avenues that we can go down. And just for clarification, Trevor has this habit of playing our media clips back at a little higher rate of speed. So we're going to get to discover your real voice right now.
My real voice, that's slightly pitched lower.
So very powerful testimony, hitting on many topics that are valuable to our listeners and to anybody who believes in the Second Amendment. You've had quite an interesting life, at least in terms of getting on History Channel, winning that, and then all of the work that has blossomed out of that. Let's get into that.
Yeah, sure thing. I think part of my background in the story is that I'm a self-taught amateur shooter who used to work at Google, and I used to not think much about the Second Amendment, to be very frank. I didn't wake up and say, oh, are my Second Amendment rights at risk, or what's going on in Second Amendment news today? For me, it was very much, I enjoyed shooting guns on occasion, but then like winning Top Shot and training really hard and winning $100,000 in a pro shooting contract with Bass Pro Shops, it changed my life in ways that I didn't imagine. I never thought and never intended to become a Second Amendment or civil rights advocate, but I believe, I strongly believe in the freedoms and the rights that we have here in our country. And I've learned that if I don't speak up and if I'm not a part of the conversation, then my rights and everybody's rights are at risk.
And you offer a really unique perspective from a couple of angles. But one of the things I love about this show and about shooting in general is oftentimes people start down this road for just a hobby, or they go to a friend's house once and shoot a gun for the first time. And then they sort of peel back the layers and understand the importance of the inherent human right to self-defense that transcends all demographics, all segments of our society. What I really like about your perspective is you come at that from several unique perspectives.
Yeah, I think for me, before I was a before I was a Second Amendment advocate, I was involved in LGBT advocacy and, trying to speak up on behalf of LGBT Americans. And I think for me, the one connective, or there's a few connective threads, but one connective thread in particular that stands out for me is that these are freedoms and civil liberties. And they're the kind of, it's also extremely hard, right? The fight for our civil rights will be one that will go on for decades, generations, and centuries. It's never going to stop, because the moment that we stop exercising our rights, protecting them, and speaking out on our rights is the second when those people who think we should have less rights are going to start come attack and start whittling away. And it's right, we're going to create a California DOJ handgun roster. We're going to, we're going to restrict certain rights in other ways.
Chris, we got to be right back. Hey everyone, the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by Carthage Lock and Key. If you need anything to do with a lock or a key
to success.
Did they tell you to say that?
No, I just thought it sounded good.
They have a mobile service, so they can come to you and cut pretty much any kind of key
to success.
Or if you lock your keys in your
to
car.
Success.
I'm talking even security modern chip keys.
To success.
Trevor, could you just jingle the name of the business?
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it good this time.
So with all of my properties and all of the needs I have, I trust
Carthage Lock and Key to success.
My name is Chris Anderson. I'm a captain with the San Antonio Police Department. I've been with my agency 27 years. My whole career in law enforcement has been spent with the San Antonio Police Department. I started off as a patrol officer, like all others do, patrolling the streets of San Antonio. About 3 years after I was on the department, I made the SWAT team, and I stayed in tactical special operations by virtue of SWAT, the gang units, street crime arrest teams, tactical response units, all types of things in that particular forte until I started to make rank. And I've been a captain for 11 years now, and I've been involved in everything from Homeland Security to patrol operations to the night commander's job, special operations, and now I'm the commander of the Special Investigations Unit. Police officer's job at the scene of a crime is simply to protect the people who are there, prevent further injury or death, preserve physical and testimonial evidence, collect it, and deliver it for processing in a criminal case. We do not determine guilt or innocence at a scene, and it's an important role in our job to remain as neutral and unattached from feelings of guilt or innocence as we can. About 90% of the people that we interact with on the streets at any given time are good, solid citizens who are trying to abide by all the laws that they know. Typically, when they interact with a police officer, it's because they violated something in the things that they don't know. And the Texas Penal Code book and Code of Criminal Procedures, local government laws, family codes, and a variety of other things are in a book that's about 8 inches thick. Most police officers don't know most of the information in it, and naturally that would tend to lead you to understand that most citizens definitely wouldn't know them all. So most of the interactions that police officers in Texas have with normal citizens is involving a law that those folks don't even know exists. Many times, and especially depending upon the level of experience that they have with the job, the speed by which they determine who's an actual suspect and who just may be a person of interest as a witness or possibly a victim is hard to determine initially. Factors that they're aware of at the scene, it all depends on those things to determine whether someone's telling the truth or not. There are obvious cases when someone's trying to deceive us, and there are people who are very good at deceiving the police. At that point, we may take a lot of people into what we term an investigative custody, or make an investigative detention on them for the purpose of determining who the actual suspects, victims, and witnesses might be. And our goal at that time is to legally arrest and take into custody the persons responsible for the crime.
Hey everybody, Eli here, and I'm really excited to tell you that the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by one of my favorite places on earth. Located here in my hometown of Carthage on the beautiful historic square, the Emporium on the square, and the Woodshed. It's a art gallery, an event center, a gift shop. They have art classes, and there's very unique Americana artwork from famous artists like Andy Thomas. They handle a lot of his originals. Framing just has this incredible old school vibe, and you can feel the history coming through. Have to check out the art gallery, but then as you work your way to the back, my favorite part, the Woodshed, had a lot of great meals in here. They've got burgers. I love their catfish. Excellent. Chicken and waffles even. It's incredible. And it's also a music venue, so we got to see my favorite band of all time, the Ben Miller Band. Ceiling was literally raining down. They were rocking so hard. But the best thing, owned by one of my favorite people on earth, that's Cherry Babcock. Check out the Emporium on the Square and the Woodshed. Rural Southwest Missouri, where obviously the predominant demographic is white, Bible Belt, Christian, and a lot of really good folks that live around here, but they're just not exposed to a lot of other cultures and demographics. And, you know, we had Yehuda Rimmer, the AKA
Pew Pew Jew.
And, you know, and sort of my lack of exposure to Jewish culture kind of came out on the show. It's like, I don't mean anything by it. I just don't know a lot of Jewish people. And for that reason, as I, you know, became a young adult and started to formulate and understand my own beliefs and political understandings. The Second Amendment was an easy one. You know, it was built in. Everyone in my area, the way we were brought up, guns were a big part of our culture, and so it was sort of a a base offering. We were sort of uploaded with this program of belief in the Second Amendment from birth. But I remember discovering in my initial days of exploring gun stuff on the internet, this group, this advocacy group for the Second Amendment called the Pink Pistols. And I have no idea if they're still an organization, but their slogan was "Armed gays don't get bashed." And I remember the discussion on the internet was kind of ugly. You know, there were people who would have been from my neck of the woods that all of a sudden weren't speaking the same language about the Second Amendment because it came from this demographic of people that they didn't relate with or didn't believe in their lifestyle. And I remember having to confront, is the Second Amendment an inalienable human right that is only enshrined by our Constitution, but is a right that we believe in, that is God-given and is a base thing for all human beings, or not? Because if you say that this organization doesn't have the First Amendment right to explain why they want to be armed and the Second Amendment right to exercise that, then are you really a Second Amendment advocate? And that has stuck with me ever since. And you touched on it in your testimony. Not only are we seeing an increase in violence against Asian Americans, but there has always, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, been a trend where the LGBT community is targeted for violence as well.
Yeah, and the Pink Pistols, thankfully, does still exist. I'm actually on their board of directors and helping guide them towards continuing to grow our membership and our engagement in this national debate. In particular, we're coming up to the 5th year anniversary of the Pulse shootings, which was one of, at the time, it was our country's most deadly domestic terrorist incident, where over 100 people were either killed or injured in a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. And 5 years ago, that Pulse shooting, it sent ripples through the LGBT community. And it was interesting, right? There was kind of this clear bifurcation where you had some LGBT Americans who basically doubled down on anti-gun, perspectives and positions. But then you had this awakening. I hate using that word, but it's the trendy thing to do these days. There's this wokeness, right, that took place where some LGBT Americans were like, wait a minute, I could have maybe had a concealed carry license. Maybe, right, I could have had that firearm on me. Maybe, right, I could have protected myself in an incident like that. And of course, these are all hypotheticals. I never like to play the game of, well, if someone had a gun, right, they could have shot. I mean, these are all hypotheticals, but the point is, it was a paradigm shift in a lot of LGBT Americans' heads that we don't have to always be an unarmed victim. And there is a way to at least equalize the playing field and to have increase your chances of survival, right, in a violent encounter or violent incident. And so we saw, LGBT involvement in the shooting sports and firearms ownership increase dramatically after the Pulse shooting. And one tidbit I love sharing this part of the story. Out of the Pulse shooting came an organization called Operation Blazing Sword. What that was a Google map that basically said, hey, anybody in America who is a firearms trainer or a gun shop owner, if you're willing to provide training assistance to the LGBT community, put your name and your contact information on this map. Within a few months, we had 1,800 Americans who were instructors from all across the country, many of them not part of the LGBT community. These were a lot of straight allies who were putting their names and contact information on this map to say, we believe, right, the Second Amendment is for all Americans. We're here to support the LGBT community. A lot of these instructors were providing firearms instruction for free, right? Free ammo, free instruction, or heavily discounted rates. And that was just so inspiring to me to see that we had non-LGBT Americans standing behind the LGBT community.
And that is exactly, I'm glad you touched on that, what I wanted to get into. We have had several guests on the show that might, I would say, come from a different perspective than a lot of not only our listener base, but what people would expect our listener base to be. So, you know, as someone who wants to see the tent of the Second Amendment be bigger and bigger, I wanna approach it from two different sort of perspectives. Have you ever found some resistance? I mean, you just highlighted where you saw some very encouraging, welcoming things from the Second Amendment community, but I assume you've also seen some resistance from certain elements of the AKA gun community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess I will say that from the firearms industry and the firearms community at large, it has been, I mean, I've had an overwhelming sense of support and encouragement and actual assistance, you know, in the form of, you know, seeing, you know, dollars and time and energy, you know, going from, you know, the firearms industry into the LGBT community. But to your question, you know, no doubt, right? There are definitely dissenters, there are definitely haters, and that's just life. And I come from the perspective that there's always going to be people rooting for you and against you. It's just sort of this general fact of life, and you just can't let yourself be consumed by the haters, and you have to, you know, right, go find your people who are there to support you no matter what, and just focus on them. Right, internet trolls are right. Just you never feed the trolls. And it's enticing sometimes, and it is a little fun. But I try not to distract myself with keyboard commandos and trolls, because it just never ends well. And again, right, I just try and focus on right, the people that are there to support me and support what I believe in.
So we've got about 45 seconds left before the break, and we'll come right back with Chris Cheng, Top Shot champion and very well-spoken and a charming advocate for the Second Amendment. So when we get back, I want to talk about your experience becoming History Channel's Top Shot and winning a professional shooting contract. But I also want to get into, from the other side, is it difficult sometimes to rally the people in your community to advocate for the Second Amendment because they've dug in on the liberal side of the political spectrum? We'll be right back on The Gun Shop Show.
Land is everything to me. When I was born, I was brought home to the family farm, was raised, learned work ethic there, learned appreciation and respect for life and the land itself, and it just became second nature. I had to be there all the time. Whenever I wasn't on the land, I was not happy. But I learned to understand the land, learned to respect it, you know, learned family values. You know, my wife and I have bought a farm besides the one we live on, and it has just been it's been a great investment, and it's been someplace that my son and I have shared the passion of hunting together, and it's just land has been everything in my life. It has kind of kept me focused and gave me a place to be. It's kind of kept me grounded.
Hey, you know what makes this, the Gun Shop Show, possible? It's people who believe in the show. And someone who has believed in the show from the very beginning is my good friend Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply. Here's a message from Chris.
Guys, my name's Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply, and I just want to take a few seconds here to let you know that we are going to be proud sponsors of the Gun Shop Show, and we appreciate everything that them guys are doing over there, and we just want to show them our support. Thank you.
So whether you have 2 chickens or 2,000 acres, Chris is your man. Give him a call. I guess that's pretty much the ad.
Whitehead Farm Supply.
Seriously?
Always.
Welcome back on the Gun Shop Show. We're joined by Chris Cheng, and right before the break, I used the word liberal, which I don't necessarily even want to. It's an overgeneralization, perhaps, but I would say there's probably definite trends among the LGBT community to resonate with Democrats or more left-leaning political ideology in general. And I know that's a generalization, but I would say there's probably that trend among some. So do you have a hard time when you're advocating for the Second Amendment to say, hey, look, none of your other politics matter. You can still believe in personal gun ownership. You can still believe in your inherent right to self-defense. And by the way, you need to have the means and the skills and the political right to defend yourself.
It's been a very interesting conversation for me. I live in San Francisco, so I have a lot of liberal friends. I'm, kind of the raspberry and the blueberry pie, if you want to think of it that way. Where I've noticed amongst my gay friends who are liberal that a lot of them they're Democrats, and they tend to kind of drink all of the Democrat Kool-Aid, right? Where if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to be anti-gun, you're supposed to be, pro-choice and this and this and that, and they sort of just are all those things. And so when I try and have a conversation about either the Second Amendment or firearms ownership, I would say my friends are a little. They defer a little bit just because they know me, I'm their friend, but they sort of kind of always fall back on, guns are dangerous, right? They kill people. Why would you need an AR-15? And it's like, okay, look, I can have these conversations, which are fine. I mean, I encourage the conversations. Right? I think we should all be engaging with people who have different belief systems, who have different opinions and perspectives about the Second Amendment or whatever topic we're talking about. But I think the difference is I feel like a lot of my San Francisco friends, they're not necessarily open to having their minds changed. It's more, okay, we're going to have some cordial discussion. But I will say, a lot of my gay friends have either wanted to go shoot and learn how to use a firearm because, it's like, look, it's hard to make an opinion about something until you've actually done a little bit of it, right? Hey, go to the range. Yeah. Go watch some videos. Go learn a little bit about our gun community, and realize that it's not racist, it's not misogynist, it's not homophobic. It's like yeah, sure, those bad apples exist out there, but generally the firearms community is amazing. It's awesome. It's wonderful. So yeah, that's sort of, I think, what my experience has been so far with San Francisco liberal friends.
I find that just globally speaking, there are a lot of topics that whenever they're, the political ideology is adverse to it, and then you show up, you fit within the umbrella of that political ideology, but yet you are a shooter. So you can show to them, look, shooters can be responsible. They can be just like me, as opposed to what TV and media is showing them is, crazy people shooting up nightclubs and shooting up malls and shooting up schools. Like, those are the minority situation. You should be prepared. Thank you for being out there and being a beacon of 2A advocacy and responsibility.
Thank you. And yeah, I think I think my general message is we should be free, independent thinkers, right? Just because you're a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, conservative, this or that, an Asian or whatever, it doesn't mean that you are obligated or have to subscribe to all of the things and the baggage sometimes that is associated with all of these labels and characterizations. So being a free, independent, and critical thinker is hard, right? Because just agreeing passively agreeing with all of sort of the things ascribed to a particular label, like, that's easy. Right? If someone's like, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and then I'm just going to lazily just agree with, I don't know, all the things that external parties are trying to tell me I'm supposed to be, like, that's easy. So I just want to encourage this free, independent, critical thought, which really means we all as individuals have to give a hard thought, like Eli mentioned, right? It's like, okay, the Second Amendment, is it truly for everyone? And do I believe that? And if I believe that, do I act that way? Do the words that come out of my mouth actually support that cause, right? And then I think we always want to do our best to live the way that we see ourselves, or we want other people to see ourselves, and try our best to make that alignment.
I want to make sure, obviously you bring this very unique perspective as a gay man, as an Asian, but it would be a mistake on my part if I didn't make sure we spend time talking about just how accomplished you are as an individual shooter. You have a tech background, and a lot of times, again, technology. I certainly would say most people would not expect a former Google employee to go off and become a professional shooter. So that's an enigma in itself, but quite an accomplishment. So let's back up and talk about, you're working at Google, which, by the way, Trevor has converted me. I spent years on the Apple bandwagon, and he pulled me out, and now I'm so dependent on Google and the business suite that Google offers.
Bad news, I'm going back the other way.
I do business with somebody, and they attach a Excel spreadsheet to the bottom of an email, and I'm like, have you never heard of Google Sheets? Come on. And so let's back up and let's say, okay, you're working at Google. How did your world get turned upside down and you become a shooter? You get on the History Channel. Tell us that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So Google was a key part of my Top Shot experience, and I'll tell you two stories that come to mind. So when season 1 of Top Shot started airing, I think it was back in 2009, I had two of my good personal friends who also worked at Google who introduced me to the show, and they're not gun people at all. They just stumbled upon Top Shot. They didn't own guns or not. They didn't shoot much, but they said, Chris, we know you like guns. Why don't the three of us watch this show every week? I'm like, okay. I had no idea what the show was about, but every week, like millions of viewers, we would sit down and watch Top Shot. And I was just enraptured by the breadth and the variety of weapons and these incredible challenges that Top Shot puts all the competitors through. And I think, like many people who are watching, their favorite show, you sit there and say, I could do that. I could do that. Whether you can actually do it or not is a whole different thing. But right, you sit there and you fantasize sometimes about, like, wow, I'd love to be on that show. And that's sort of what Top Shot was for me. But I had almost no business applying for the show because I wasn't a professional shooter. I didn't actually shoot that often. I was just getting into local IDPA and USPSA matches, and I wasn't doing well. I was placing in the bottom like 50%, of the squads. And I remember my two friends asked me when I told them I was going to apply for season 4 of Top Gun, they go, Chris, you have literally 0 accolades to your name, and what makes you think that you could go up against some of the best shooters in the world? And I said, look, all I know is that I have a lot of fun doing this, and when I'm aiming at my targets, that I hit my shots. And the only way that we ever know where we stand in life is if you throw your hat in the ring and go compete. And I love competing.
I love it because you need both aspects of this. You need a friend, because what a true, like an okay friend just tells you what you want to hear, right? Like that's a casual friend. A really, really good friend comes to you when it's uncomfortable and says, "Are you sure, buddy?" I get it and I support you, but really, I'm not so sure this is a good idea. You get a bad haircut and you need that friend to be like, no, don't do it. So, but you also need people like you in the world that are like, thanks, but I'm gonna go for it anyway. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I knew once I started the application process, I knew how far behind the curve I was. And so training for me was a full-time job almost. I was spending, 20 to 25 hours a week, learning about the finer points of marksmanship and really zeroing in on those core principles to train, to the best of my ability and ultimately come out on top.
So we're coming up on a break. And by the way, this is the end of the first hour. So if you are watching on TV, don't worry. There's a whole second hour of the Gun Shop Show. You just won't find it on your television. So you need to go to Facebook, type in Liberty Tree Guns, and you'll see the live stream. And remember, when you get on that live stream, all you have to do is tag 5 of your friends in the comments and share the feed. And this week, we are giving away
that looks like a barkeep.
That is a Heritage Rough Rider barkeep. So stay with us. Good stuff. Be right back on the Gun Shop Show, and we'll have more fun with Chris Cheng. And I want to draw a parallel to something he said about just going for it when we get back on the Gun Shop Show. Hey, podcast listeners and live stream viewers. I wanted to let you know that the Gun Shop Show is made possible by our friends at Mid-America RV. Being in the customer service industry, I have a really high standard for how customers are treated. Mid-America RV does it right. I've got my RV through their dealership, and I've taken it all over the country. We made it to South Padre Island. We've gone to Colorado several times. And if you've ever owned an RV, you know there's a lot that comes with it. So who you get it from matters, and it's extremely important that you have support after the sale. They're located just outside of Carthage. They have a really vast inventory, and they are home of, I believe they call it a forever warranty. So I urge you, if you're in the market for one, to check them out. It's a really fun and can be very affordable way to get your trips in. So visit them at midamericarv.com. We appreciate their support of the Gun Shop Show. If you're in the market for a travel trailer or fifth wheel, check out Mid-America RV.
Hey members, thank you again for joining us today. I have spent a lot of time talking to several of our independent program attorneys who have all given me the same great practical advice on what to do if you ever have to display or use your firearm to stop a threat. Always make sure you call 911 to report that you were almost a victim of a crime. Why? Because if you don't, there is a very high likelihood that the bad guy will call 911 and report you as the criminal. This exact scenario is illustrated by the story of Scott, one of our members from Colorado. This is what happened. Scott was exiting the supermarket when he was verbally assaulted by 2 individuals who were looking for an altercation.
The verbal assault became so heated that our member was afraid for his life. Scott was forced to defuse this potential deadly threat by displaying his firearm and demanding to be left alone. Being the cowards that they were, the bad guys backed away. Our member, however, made a critical mistake, thinking the situation was over, and drove off. It was only a few blocks away. Scott was pulled over, handcuffed, and taken into custody. How in the world did this happen? Well, the answer is simple. The bad guys called 911 first and reported Scott as the aggressor. The lesson here is criminals lie. Scott was the victim of the crime and was charged with disorderly conduct, and only after a lengthy legal process, all charges were dismissed. Since Scott is a member of U.S. Law Shield, he ended up paying 0 attorney's fees. Unfortunately, this ordeal still disrupted his life. Members, please do not let this happen to you. Thank you, Scott, for sharing your story with us. Members, if you have a great story relating to owning a firearm or how your U.S. Law Shield membership has benefited you, we want to hear about it. Share your story at memberstories@uslawshield.com, and maybe we will include it in our next newsletter.
People are always asking me, Eli, you seem to get the best deals on things. What is your secret?
Glory actions and estate sales.
Trevor, I appreciate you jingling, but I have to say the ad part first because people need to know about the company.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do
And
that.
then also, it's it's covering up my face. So
right.
just get a picture like from their Facebook page, because that's the best place. And then just put it right up here where the Gun Shop Show logo is. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'll do better this time.
And so let me finish the ad, and then you can jingle. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the best place to go is their Facebook page.
Oh, glory actions and estate sales.
You know what? Fine. I'll just move in between the graphics and finish telling people that the best place to find out when
Old Glory actions and estate sales. I think I got it that time, man.
Our member is involved in a brief road rage incident. One driver cuts off another in traffic, and harsh words and gestures soon follow. After the pleasantries are exchanged, our driver goes on his way, assuming the incident is over. However, still agitated, the other driver calls 911 and reports our member as aggressive, possibly having seen a weapon in his hand. In reality, what he saw was our member flipping him the bird. In an incident that can only be described as an overreaction by officers, our member is pulled over. When officers learn that he carries a legal concealed firearm, they arrest him despite a lack of evidence. This incident is just one of numerous member experiences. Be aware when traveling with a firearm. Any aggressive actions made by you, right or wrong, can land you in jail. Don't let it happen to you.
Buckle up, because belts just got better. With Core Essentials, the perfect fit every time. With 40+ sizing positions. Styles for any situation. Whether in the boardroom, crushing sales and taking names, on your next adventure, in the great outdoors, or when you're done for the day and ready to relax. Get your perfect fit with Core Essentials.
In order to sponsor the Gun Shop Show, send us an email at thegunshopshow@gmail.com.
Listen here, Pilgrim. This here is the Gun Shop Show.
The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. What is it? We don't know. The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. Here we go, it's the Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. We are joined by History Channel's Top Shot Season 4 champion, Chris Cheng. And we're going to have continue to have what's already been an awesome discussion with him. But I want to remind you before we get into that, that you can win a gun today. And actually, your odds are pretty good. A lot of gun giveaways. You're lumped in with hundreds of thousands of entries. So to win this cool little single action 22 long rifle Heritage Rough Rider barkeep. This is a little, what is that, 2-inch barrel, Logan?
Two and a half, maybe.
No, I don't think that's
that's pinky length
That's
at
probably
best.
2 inches.
Pinky length.
Yeah.
See? I can spot a pinky from a mile away, man. I know a pinky when I see it.
That is pretty good estimation.
Also, those things shoot like a dream.
Yeah, ton of fun.
They're fantastic.
Really cool. Just always going to get a reaction if you pull that out at the range. Just looks like a ton of fun. Right before the break, our guest, Chris, was talking about his preparation for Top Shot, the TV show and the competition, and how he really, almost had no business signing up for it initially. And that reminded me, I have reflected on this premise a lot lately. Some of for me, it's been in business. I think back to some of the things I got myself into, the notions that I started, including this store, and I had no business. If now looking back, thinking just how little I knew, how little money I had, how little all of the things that were stacked against me, I shouldn't have done it. On paper, it made no sense. There was a strong chance that I would fail, and statistically probably would fail. But for me, it was a matter of once I say I'm doing it, there's no going back. I have to give it my best shot. And then you force yourself to be in a scenario where you just have to give your best effort, and you can believe that you can't let it fail. I've heard entrepreneurship described as jumping off a cliff and building an airplane on the way down. And any major experience can be that way. If you say, hey, look, I filled out the form, I sent it in, now I got to get ready and do the very best I can. It's a motivator unlike anything else. If you just said, well, I'll try to improve, and if I get good, then maybe I'll apply sometime in the future, you may not have approached it with the same level of urgency and seriousness, so that whatever that trait is, that boldness that makes us just go for it, it seems like you had it when you did that.
Yeah, and I love your analogy of jumping off the cliff and build a plane on the way down, because it definitely felt like that. And one thing that was really funny about my time on Top Shot was, on the one hand, I clearly wanted to win, and I'm a competitor. I love winning. But on the other hand, I had this sort of the pragmatic, realist side of me saying, hey, Chris, you might not make it past more than a few episodes. And my primary goal was to make my family proud, and the opposite, don't embarrass my family, and to make it past the first episode. That was sort of, I just need to I don't want to get eliminated in the very first episode. And so it was this weird kind of juxtaposition of, okay, I want to make it all the way to the end and win my season of Top Shot, yet it was every step of the way, right? Every single challenge, it was, I need to tackle this particular challenge right in front of me right now. I can't take my eye off the prize, but I can't be distracted by that prize at the end of the tunnel. I just have to be hyper focused and vigilant on the things that I needed to do right in front of me right now at that time, which was winning a challenge.
Was there a moment where the conversation in your head changed from, I don't know that I'll be able to pull this off, to, I think I got this?
There was a key moment where it was basically the final episode, where it was, the final four. I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I'm in the final four. So, I mean, literally I have a 25% chance, of winning this thing. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, kind of rerunning the tape, comparing my past performance to my competitors' past performance. I said, I think I actually stand a really, really good chance of winning this whole thing. And a big part of competition, right? I played a lot of baseball when I was growing up, and you just have to have a positive, self-visualized attitude of seeing yourself win, believing that you can. But it has to be more than just seeing and believing. It also requires analyzing your skill and understanding. For me, I was going every single challenge. I would go through a routine of almost contingency plans, right? If I was shooting a Benelli M4 shotgun and I had a type 1 malfunction, like what is my clearing right process? And if I'm if I've got one target left and I get a jam, like just visualizing myself working through just literally the whole span of problems that could come up, with a weapon. And so that was a part of my visualization process, right? And that part of that was seeing myself push through the pain, push through the challenges and the frustration, but ultimately coming out on top. So, right, visualizing yourself winning doesn't just mean you've won, right? You're not like standing there on the podium. For me, it's like you have to see and imagine, right, all of the challenges and the travails that you might face, right, during a competition or right during a moment.
And what you described is actually something that in various versions I've heard repeated by some of the all-time greatest champions in different categories is they come across sometimes as arrogant from the fact that they say, well, what do you think your odds are? What's going to happen? And they say, oh, I've already won. I've already seen it happen. And that seems like, oh, they're just being completely cocky, but that's part of I've already gone through the scenario in my head. I think I know how it's going to go. I've already seen it and visualized it. But one thing that's really kind of interesting, I was just describing this scenario to my wife, to really succeed in anything and also be happy, not be miserable and totally deflated if you don't win or if you don't succeed. You have to simultaneously have this urgency and this undeniable belief that failure is not an option, and also have no expectation of getting a reward that you're seeking. Simultaneously, it's like doublethink. I need to be okay with going into this, knowing that nothing may come of it, but also believing that it's a foregone conclusion. I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Indeed. So there's a second part of kind of the Google story that I would love to share, which is culture change. And so culture change, especially at an office, is really hard. And so before going on Top Shot, I'd be at Google and we had like an open office floor plan. And I had one colleague who was a gun guy and we were on the same team. And so he'd occasionally, talk shop with me, but we're on this open office floor. And sometimes he'd come up to me like, Chris, hey, I went to the range this past weekend and, I shot a Remington 870. And then all of a sudden he'd like catch himself and be like, oh no, I'm talking about guns in the open office. So he's like, okay, Chris, like, let's go into, the side office. We'll close the door. We'll turn our monitors away from the glass window. And then we sit there and we talk all we want about guns, right? So I think a lot of people I've heard tell me like they've had that same experience, right? Talking about guns at work. Now, the benefit and I think the impression and the Top Shot just changed a lot of people's minds about firearms. And so after I came back from my Top Shot experience, my colleagues, they generally knew that I was going on the History Channel to shoot guns. They didn't quite understand what the show was about, but they understood it was fun. And so when I came back, I'm standing in this open office floor plan, and I was a customer support manager at the time. And so, I'm walking the floor, just, saying hi to, people on my team. And, one of my teammates, he raises his hand, which was like, hey, Ryan, I got a question. I walk over. He's got, dual 27-inch monitors, and he has got all sorts of gun parts and, this paraphernalia up on his screen. And he goes, Chris, so I'm looking to build my first AR, and I'm really confused about, barrel twist and like 16 versus 18-inch, barrels, and what kind of bolt carrier group should I get? He's like, where do I even start? And I'm just like, I jaw dropped for a second. Like, we're literally talking about like building your own AR-15 like in a Google office, and there's like 20, 25 people within earshot of like this conversation. And we just had the conversation. I'm like, okay, like, it was interesting because my colleagues didn't see me as a threat. And I think that's often what a lot of people are scared about, right? When you're talking about firearms in the office, like, oh, like if an employee who doesn't know you hears you talking about guns, right, then they might think, oh, you're a crazy gun guy who maybe is going to come and shoot up the office one day, right? It's like all these like crazy, right, like, presumptions, which are just, rarely true. But right, the fact that I could just like openly talk about building an AR-15 in the Google office was kind of this like, wow, like the culture has definitely shifted in what I consider a good way, right? Where we should be free to talk about, right, any variety of topics, at the workplace, as long as it's safe and it's not threatening.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are feel threatened just by the concept of guns.
We're coming up on a break, and as soon as we get back, I want to talk about that difference culturally across the country right here on the Gun Shop Show. Hey everyone, the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by Carthage Lock and Key. If you need anything to do with a lock or a key
to success.
Did they tell you to say that?
No, I just thought it sounded good.
They have a mobile service, so they can come to you and cut pretty much any kind of key
to success.
Or if you lock your keys in your
to
car.
Success.
I'm talking even security modern chip keys.
To success.
Trevor, could you just jingle the name of the business?
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it good this time.
So, with all of my properties and all of the needs I have, I trust
Carthage Lock and Key to success.
Our evenings, or often on weekends, are spending Friday and Saturday nights on the deck with our friends. Before, everybody would be crowded. We could barely sit together. We were walking on top of each other if everybody was on the deck. Now there's plenty of room for everyone to roam around and relax comfortably and have plenty of space.
Specifically, I know that every post they bury to a certain depth with full concrete. They use 6x6 posts, strapping and hurricane strapping on everything. It's how I feel a deck should be built if it's going to be built right.
Hey everybody, Eli here, and I'm really excited to tell you that the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by one of my favorite places on earth. Located here in my hometown of Carthage on the beautiful historic square, the Emporium on the square, and the Woodshed. It's a art gallery, an event center, a gift shop. They have art classes, and there's very unique Americana artwork from famous artists like Andy Thomas. They handle a lot of his original framing. Just has this incredible old school vibe, and you can feel the history coming through. Have to check out the art gallery, but then as you work your way to the back, my favorite part, the Woodshed. Had a lot of great meals in here. They've got burgers. I love their catfish. Excellent. Chicken and waffles even. It's incredible. And it's also a music venue, so we got to see my favorite band of all time, the Ben Miller Band. Ceiling was literally raining down. They were rocking so hard. But the best thing, owned by one of my favorite people on earth, that's Cherry Babcock. Check out the Emporium on the square and the Woodshed.
This just in. Huge cave found beneath the heart of the city. Spelunkers shared tales of an underground cavern system in Carthage, Missouri. Locals report the entrance to be at 10th and Garrison.
Cave Gang Pizza. Stop in and enjoy wings, wood fire pizza made with local ingredients, and our full bar. Bring the whole gang and uncover a legend.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show, coming to you on the airwaves of our great partners at News Talk KZRG and Springfield's Talk 104.1, and then always available at gunshopshow.com, where you can find all of the podcast listening options. We sometimes have folks who maybe they catch it on television or they catch it on the radio, and they tell me, "Oh man, I was so disappointed. I was out and about and I was really into the show, and then something happened. Something came up and they had to quit." And they kind of acted like, well, it's just lost forever. But guess what?
We keep all the greatest hits.
It's not 1985 anymore. You can get on the internet and get every episode ever and listen to it at your own convenience in your headphones, in your car, or whatever device you use. So get the podcast on Google Podcasts, for example.
We just hit Amazon Music.
We're on
yesterday.
Amazon Music?
Yeah, they got a podcast section, and I was like, why not?
You know what?
When in Rome. When in Rome.
It is timely. So we were talking about culture a little bit with our guest, Top Shot champion and Second Amendment advocate Chris Cheng. And he was talking about how he almost felt some hesitation or some cautiousness talking about guns inside of Google in the offices in California. And it is amazing our perception of, for a lot of Southwest Missourians, we might be surprised to learn that anybody in California is building an AR. Are guns even allowed in California? That's how much separation there is. Yeah. But I have also experienced there are pockets of folks who are not only so hesitant, and usually it's born out of ignorance, but they're so cautious about guns that they will treat you differently, professionally and otherwise. So I was just in a business meeting. So my primary business here is Liberty Tree Guns and it's Second Amendment, and we get comfortable in within our industry talking to other gun people. Everything's very casual. We'll joke around even on the topic of gun ownership. But I have some other business dealings, and I was actually in talks with some high-level people at a coffee roasting distributorship, and my friend went to introduce me, and he said, "And tell them what you do." And I said, "Well, I own a sporting goods store." And he asked me afterwards, he's like, "Why did you say sporting goods? Everyone that knows you own the gun shop. You own a gun business on the internet and brick and mortar." I said, "You don't understand. I've had conversations where everything's going great. I'm getting along. Socially, it's a good thing. And they say, 'And what do you do?' And you tell them, 'I own a gun store.' And they're freaked out. They don't want to talk to you, or they think you're somehow a bad person. Like you're, and then that is primarily, in my opinion, an education gap. They think, whether it's from the media or sometimes it's honestly from a personal bad experience. The only time they've seen a gun or been around a gun was something a bad guy did in their neighborhood. And that's something that here in Southwest Missouri, where everybody, doesn't matter where you go, any major factory or place of employment, you can openly and frequently talk about guns, your personal gun collection, what you do with guns, the hunting you do, and it's totally socially normal. That's not true in every cultural and sociological part of the country. So there are areas, what was the name of that gentleman we had on that does work in the inner city, Trevor?
Kevin Dixon, I believe.
Yeah, I mean,
KD.
Yeah.
KD.
I mean,
KD's great.
He showcased just that, guns for him had a whole different implication growing up. It wasn't until he got exposed to responsible gun ownership that he even began to understand what guns should be and could be used for. And so there, even within our own country where we have a Second Amendment right to be free, people's closeness to gun ownership is totally different.
Yeah, indeed. And it's, I think, to go back to this concept of, right, like kind of sort of coming out as a gun owner is sort of how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many closeted gun owners here in California and in Silicon Valley in particular, where I'm actually full-time back in Silicon Valley. And so, you know, it's not always, quote unquote, safe to come out, right, as a gun owner. So I'm not advocating that everybody just, you know, you go back into your white collar office and start talking about how, you know, right, you went to the range last weekend. I mean, it is a very personal decision whether to come out as a gun owner at work, and it's not always without risk. You know, however, right, that being said, another parallel that I find between LGBT, sort of my LGBT advocacy and Second Amendment advocacy, is you have to be vocal. You have to be vocal and visible when and where it makes sense, right? So if the four of us were walking down the street, just sort of wearing, like unlogoed generic clothes, right? Like people may not know that we're gun owners, right? And most people would probably look at me and without knowing me, like they wouldn't know I'm gay, right? So unless I make it known that I am a gun owner who, you know, happens to be gay, right, no one's going to know. So the concept of trying to normalize a thing, whether it's, right, LGBT, 2A, or whatever we're talking about, like education, visibility, and speaking up about it is one of the key things that each of us, right, is capable of doing. But it takes sometimes it takes some strength, sometimes it takes a little bit of bravery, and ultimately, though, you know, if we really want to be free, right? If we really want to be free in this country, it requires all of us being accepting of, right, Americans from all different walks of and backgrounds. And it doesn't mean that you have to embrace, right, all these different sort of lifestyles or you know, activities and perspectives. I think it just comes down to understanding, right? Understanding where people are coming from, why they think or do certain things. And you don't have to say that I agree with it. It's just about saying, hey, look, I respect that person and what they're doing. I may not agree with them, but this is a free country, right? And people can do whatever they want to do as long as they're not hurting themselves or other people, then, right, like, so be it.
That's what America should be. That's what really America was built on. It's amazing how it seems like recently we've somehow had to fight our way back to this premise that that's what the founding of our country was built upon, that we go through these cultural growths and regressions on that topic. Is yeah, I don't have to embrace everything about you or your lifestyle or all of the things that you believe in, but I can accept you, and I can say, hey, we can cherish this thing that we share together, that we both believe in, and that we both think is something worth defending. When we get back, I want to draw a parallel about what life might be like in our neck of the woods versus San Francisco, right here on the Gun Shop Show. People are always asking me, Eli, you seem to get the best deals on things. What is your secret?
Glory actions and estate sales.
Trevor, I appreciate you jingling, but I have to say the ad part first because people need to know about the company.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do it.
And then also, it's it's covering up my face. So
I'll
just get a picture like from their Facebook page, because that's the best place, and then just put it right up here where the Gun Shop Show logo is. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I'll do better this
time.
Then
and so let me finish the ad, and then you can jingle. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the best place to go is their Facebook page.
Oh, glory actions and estate sales.
You know what? Fine. I'll just move in between the graphics and finish telling people that the best place to find out when
old glory actions and estate sales. I think I got it that time, man.
Land is everything to me. When I was born, I was brought home to the family farm, was raised, learned work ethic there, learned appreciation and respect for life and the land itself, and it just became second nature. I had to be there all the time. Whenever I wasn't on the land, I was not happy. But I learned to understand the land, learned to respect it, learned family values. My wife and I have bought a farm besides the one we live on, and it has just been it's been a great investment, and it's been someplace that my son and I have shared the passion of hunting together, and it's just land has been everything in my life. It has kind of kept me focused and gave me a place to be. It's kind of kept me grounded.
Hey, you know what makes this, the Gun Shop Show, possible? It's people who believe in the show. And someone who has believed in the show from the very beginning is my good friend Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply. Here's a message from Chris.
Guys, my name's Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply, and I just want to take a few seconds here to let you know that we are going to be proud sponsors of the Gun Shop Show, and we appreciate everything that them guys are doing over there, and we just want to show them our support. Thank you.
So whether you have 2 chickens or 2,000 acres, Chris is your man. Give him a call. I guess that's pretty much the ad.
Whitehead Farm Supply.
Seriously?
Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma devastated the Texas and Florida coast, causing unprecedented damage. During difficult times like these, we tend to experience the best out of people, as seen in countless heroic images of neighbor helping neighbor. However, these events can also bring out the worst out of people, seeking to take advantage when you are the most vulnerable. From the moment rain and wind started, calls have been pouring into our emergency attorney hotline from members who were forced to abandon guns in their homes overtaken by floodwaters, as well as members who have had to protect their property from looting. Our member John was one of those callers after he was forced to use his gun. Here is his story. During Harvey, John and his son were combating the water that continued to rise in their home. Suddenly, John noticed a truck driving up and down the street, creating wakes. Each time the truck passed, it pushed more water into John's home. As the truck was coming back around, John's son went out to confront the driver and ask him to stop. John didn't recognize the truck as being from the neighborhood and was worried the driver might be casing the street looking for an opportunity to loot empty houses. Responsibly and legally armed, he followed his son outside. As John walked toward the truck, the driver started accelerating straight at his son. John, fearing for his son's safety, fired a single shot in order to startle the driver and give his son time to move. When the police arrived, they intended to arrest John for deadly conduct. He called the Lost Shield emergency hotline and was immediately advised by his independent program attorney. After the attorney talked to the police, they determined that a crime had not been committed because John acted in lawful defense of his son. Thank goodness John is a Lost Shield member and knew exactly what to do when the police arrived. We were there for John when he needed us most, and we are here for you 24/7 with our attorney-answered emergency hotline.
Cheng, Cheng, Cheng. I hate to admit that we've been doing that all morning. I really hate to admit it. Usually reserve revealing just how ridiculous we are for the Showverdive portion of the show. But it hit me as we were discussing some of these things. I wanna throw this out there. Imagine how much more difficult socially it would be to come out as gay in Southwest Missouri in the Bible Belt, where culturally that's not as common publicly, that would be an uphill battle for an individual, right? You can say without a doubt it would affect your social circle, your friendships, your implications at work. It would happen. I'm not saying that everybody around here is bigoted or non-accepting, but it would have an impact, a different impact than it would have in San Francisco, California. And think about the inverse of that. You can come out as a gun owner in Southwest Missouri and people are like,
we knew all along.
So,
like what? Whatever.
Like, until you tell me you have over 500 guns, like, what? You're nothing special. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like, that's default, right? But you just showcased. Is it even okay in my office in San Francisco, California, to be a gun owner? Like, am I going to lose a friend? I might. Because you said, oh, I had a good experience. I met some other gun owners, and I began to become comfortable discussing my gun ownership and my hobbies with some other people at work. But undoubtedly, there was a reason why you felt some hesitation initially. I'm sure there are some people in that office space who didn't think it was okay, or were non-accepting of the premise, or maybe non-accepting of you as a person because of it on some level.
Yeah, I'm sure that existed, and it makes me think about this tech executive kind of shooting group that I'm a part of. And out of the 6 tech execs that are in this group, only one of them is willing to be out as a gun owner at work, and that one person is me. And,
Yeah.
And so we, the 6 of us, right? We've had this conversation. I'm like, hey, like why do you fear coming out as a gun owner at work? And it's sort of like the higher, right? The older we get, then the higher we progress. Kind of up the ladder. We sort of have like more to lose. Right. There's especially for my colleagues who have families, right? They have kids, they have mortgages. It's like, right, if they were to lose their job or if they were to lose promotion opportunities, and right, and it's like the discrimination against gun owners can be subtle, right, in the workplace, right? So it's like, okay, like I come out as a gun owner and then all of a sudden, hey, like, right, I was rocketing up, getting promotions and getting all these like big projects, but I come out as a gun owner and then, hey, all of a sudden the spigot starts to slowly turn off, and right, those big projects and opportunities like stop coming my way, and right, maybe you don't get invited, right, to certain meetings, or you don't get invited for happy hour drinks, with sort of right key people. So these tech executives were kind of sharing those kind of concerns with me, which again, like I understand, right? That's sort of the potential reality, right, for some people. And I guess for me, as I navigate through my career in Silicon Valley, I'm looking to work for a company that is okay, right, with me being a gun owner, and I'm on a team, so I'm on the IT side of the house for corporate security, for my employer who I can't name, but it's great, right? It's like I'm around former military and like law enforcement folks, right, who are on corporate security. So it's like I've found a very good home within, right, a Silicon Valley company to be out as a gun owner, but that's not everybody's situation. So yeah, we should be treading carefully and thoughtfully when coming out as a gun owner at work.
Do you think that in some of the instances where you might be treated differently because you're a gun owner, let's say you're at a company and you're pretty confident that there would be some implication if it were known, do you think that is born, like most forms of discrimination or bigotry, mostly out of ignorance?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Most of the time it's either some kind of ignorance or some kind of preconceived notion, right? That, let's just take, for example, that, oh, any gun owner must be violent or have violent thoughts and therefore must be dangerous and I must stay away from gun owners, right? That's, I think, a common, right, misconception. And so part of my approach towards, trying to, I guess, break the ice or come out as a gun owner is I don't come out as a gun owner at the start, right? If I have a colleague who's, just joined the company and right, I'm it's just establishing rapport with them. I want them to meet me just sort of first as a person, right? Hey, like let's just get to know each other, establish some level of trust, and then later, right, depending on sort of my read of of this person, right, later I might mention, hey, right, I went to the range, or right, I was chatting with somebody about a pistol, or just last night I was slacking with a coworker who's like, I'm finally gonna put a red dot on my pistol, and then we went into a whole conversation of why, then okay, what kind of pistol, what kind of red dots are you considering, what's your use case? So if I'm gonna like reference some of those kind of conversations, I might do that later, right, in the timeline of me interacting with a colleague.
And what's interesting about that is that proves that we're predisposed as human beings to have a reaction where if we have a personal experience first, it forces us to have a genuine approach to another person who might be different. And I keep outing myself as someone who grew up kind of culturally sheltered, right? So I never knew until I was a grown man, police officer, professional, I never knowingly had a close personal friendship with a gay person. So like I knew of people from my school who were outwardly gay, but it was kind of, I was brought up in a Christian home where it was considered a lifestyle that we disagreed with. Of course, we were always taught to be loving to everyone, but it was kind of like this thing that's just over there. It's like we feel this way about it, but it's very much in the distance. And then I had a very close personal friend who had already spent years knowing that I liked, by the way, who was a gun owner, who was not what my, preconceived notion of what a gay man would be like, come to me and can tell me personally, hey, I feel like I need to know. I've got this this relationship I'm developing, and it's going to come out, and I want you to hear from me that I'm gay. And I feel like if I don't tell you that I'm doing a disservice in our friendship. And it was the first time I had to say, okay, what difference does that make for me? We've already been friends. Like, I don't have to wonder about what it's going to be like. It did change, though. Okay, so I'm thinking back to every interaction we've ever had. Does that change anything about our relationship? And I kept thinking, is it okay to do this or say that or make that joke or do this certain activity? And I finally had to be like, no, we've done it all along. And I think maybe it's kind of the same way. If you have positive relationships with, and they know you as a human being with your coworkers, and then they find out you own guns, you're like, it's impossible to say that you're a monster. I've known you and I know all of these great things about you. So let's come right back on the break and get more into that right here on the Gun Shop Show.
Commercial idea for net fishes. I walk into the commercial director, we'll call him's office. I say to him, hey, how's it going? He replies, good, we got your commercial ready to go. Are you ready to listen? Yeah, but before I do, I have an idea I want to float by you. He says, okay, a bit sarcastically. And I say, all right. And I clear my throat and I start singing this song, something similar. Net fishes, we're all really good friends, hanging out and stuff, and having memories to talk about when we were young. Net fishes, and I say the business name wrong, like Fishnets. He replies, "That's terrible. And you didn't even say the right business name at the end. It's your business." Then it cuts to Fishnetches. Nav Fishes, where we can all be friends. And commercial.
The Gun Shop Show costs money to make, and the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by pecans and cheese. Not really. Actually, we didn't have any sponsors for this segment, and so I decided that I would take a snack break, and also I decided if you guys are tired of listening to me eat cheese and nuts, that you need to buy an ad. So from now on, if our ad sponsorships don't sell out, you're going to have to listen to me eat nuts and cheese. In order to sponsor the Gun Shop Show, send us an email at thegunshopshow@gmail.com.
Next week, chips.
The Gun Shop Show, brought to you by little old ladies. They're little and they're old. They're little old ladies. Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. During the break, we're having a laugh about the outro music and the little pause there, as our guests can't hear the music. And that's why sometimes I have to jump in and cut them off, because they don't know that the segment's ending. So Chris was sitting there watching me going, right back on the Gun Shop Show. He's like, these guys are weird.
Well, he's right. We definitely are weird.
Can't fight it.
Speaking of weird, man, I feel like we're living in a twilight zone this day and age. That, first of all, I'd love to get to the point to where no one's closeted about anything, that you don't feel like you have to hide anything about who you are. Well, as long as it doesn't hurt me, I'm fine. But what I'm saying is,
like, ooh, I want to keep some things in the closet.
Yeah, there's some things.
Okay.
It recently came out that I eat Vienna sausages regularly.
Oh, that changes everything.
You eat them straight out of the tin and you're just like...
Yep. Yep. I do have to have crackers, though. That's this whole thing.
Turns out Eli's a direct descendant of the Beverly Hillbillies, so that's why.
That makes a lot of sense.
He eats his possum on his pool table.
You know, you laugh, but like legit, straight up, that is my heritage, and it creates the roadmap for my experiences. And so, yeah. But a friend of mine very generously let me use his Florida home for a vacation destination. And one of the things we accidentally did, since we were flying back, is we left a little bit of groceries, and and I left some Vienna sausages in the cabinet. And he thought, well,
interesting choice of bait.
No, he said, I respect you, and I think you're a reasonable guy. So I opened them up, and I tried them, and I almost threw up. So there's. Now it's out there, but there are some things that maybe I want to keep behind closed doors there, Trevor.
Yeah, you're right about the Vienna sausages. That should be a forever secret.
Yeah, it's easier.
That should be like a direct-to-consumer experience. Yeah. Don't even put it on the shelf.
It's easier if people don't know.
Well, anyway, I was just saying, like, the fact that you have to come out about being a gun owner is shocking to me, that like somehow we've regressed as a society to the point to where it's not okay. And I know the politics are playing a huge part in that, like the politics are making people conform to this ideology where they have to commit to a party and all of its blanket ideology, that now that if you walk in, you're like, hey man, I shoot guns and I'm responsible, they automatically are going to somehow curb you or treat you differently. It's terrible that we've regressed in that regard.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone. That's what I'm saying.
I think Chris is on mute because his dog's in the background.
Yeah, this is one of the things about, you know, pandemic where I've got, you know, a 6-month-old puppy who just she just barks at everything. Like the slightest noise, it's like, intruder. There she is.
Yeah.
Barking at something. I have no idea what.
I heard it earlier and thought Logan just like let out a cough or something.
Yeah. I cough like a dog barks.
Speaking of dogs and how stupid of a hillbilly I am, you know what I did that was really dumb?
Ate Vienna sausages? I don't know.
That's, yeah.
I got a dog and named him Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
And he barks in a impolite, like neighborhood, socially unacceptable way out in the yard. And no one looks like a bigger idiot than the guy that goes out to scold the dog for barking who named him Barkley. Barkley, stop barking! Like, yeah, like we named him Gnarls Barkley because we thought it was clever, and now we take him places. You know, we're in a campground and he's barking, and I'm like, Barkley, trust me, he never does this. Barkley.
Well, if naming him Barkley made him bark, next time name him like Pick 3 winner or something.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like Powerball. Name him Powerball.
Name him winning lottery numbers.
Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
Oh, me. We have 2 dogs. They're both Bernedoodles. So it's a Bernese Mountain Dog and Poodle mix. And they're just gorgeous, super great demeanor, except when they're barking and protecting. Hey, no, stop it. Shh, I'm interviewing.
Yeah, I kind of like it because I imagine if you're going down the road in your car and you're listening to this audio, in a way, the dog barking just kind of spices it up. You know, we use gunfire on the show because I figure if you're just tuning in for the first time and the show opens with gunshots, you're like, well, what do we have here? You know, it's not Rush Limbaugh. Something's different coming over these speakers. So maybe dog barking is kind of the same way.
Yeah. We used to host the show on the sales floor, so you'd hear all the background sounds of the sales floor. Maybe we should host it in different locations. Like we could go to a kennel, have dogs chatting in the background.
Doing it on the sales floor was so awkward though because we ran out of room, and so we had these clearance bins where we took like all these accessories, you know, and they're just in big baskets, but they're like a foot from my desk where I'm broadcasting the show. And guys, I mean, they had no boundaries with it. So like, you know, it's the store and it's open and this is product I want to look at, so I don't care what you're doing the weird headphone thing over here. But they would sit there and they're like digging in the basket, like staring at me, you know, over here trying to be cool. I'm like, if you'd like to win a gun today, blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, I hope I find a bargain in here, staring me down.
That would be super awkward.
It was hard to do. It did help me develop the skills to block it all out. Okay, we've gotten off the wagon trail a bit
Big time.
here.
Big time.
Chris, so you imagine you're involved in several advocacy efforts. Let's make sure we take some time to talk about folks who want to follow you, who want to follow some of the things that you're working on. How do they find you?
So you can find me at Top Shot Chris on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Website, topshotchris.com. I also have a book called Shoot to Win, which is a instructional book for beginner shooters. So pistol, rifle, shotgun. I take all of the core fundamentals of marksmanship that I was studying to win Top Shot and present it in a way that is simple and easy to understand for the new shooter.
Do you touch on your book anything that you used in terms of sort of those mental exercises that you describe, preparation? Do you cover any of that in your book?
Yeah, there's actually a whole chapter on basically kind of like having a sports mentality, not just about envisioning yourself succeeding at sport, but it's also about life. Right. And earlier, right, you were talking about building your business, and I've, built my own business and brand as Top Shot Chris Cheng. And a part of my success is having first goals, like very concrete goals of, right, what does success right, look for me at the end of the road, and then seeing myself going through as many of these, trials and tribulations of highs and lows, of successes and failures, and pushing through, all right, all of those tough times. So the book is not just about beginning marksmanship, but it's also about putting these life building blocks, right, of success, and trying to educate and kind of teach people, like, hey, here are these tools and tips and tactics that have helped me succeed and win at life. And I want to kind of share that as widely and broadly as possible.
That's really noble of you, because I assume, and my guess by having met you is some of that for you is built in. You're driven. These are things that you naturally do. And that's not the case for everybody who goes out and puts themselves out there. But it is, in some terms, teachable. If you say, well, I don't really feel a lot of self-doubt, but here's why. Here's how I look at things. Here's how I approach things. And here's why I'm not paralyzed by fear. And so that is a very positive thing. I think that one of the notions people might have about gun owners is that they're not thoughtful and they're not sharing in terms of just overall life enhancement. But just our conversation with you today proves that that's not true, and that you have put a lot of thought into your, not only your gun ownership, but your path through this sort of chapter of your life. How else can people find you?
Yeah, so one of my primary projects at the moment is in response to the continued increase in racist attacks against Asian Americans. A bunch of us have formed a group called AAPI Go, stands for Asian American Pacific Islander Gun Owners. So it's a new gun owners group, and we're focused on safety, education, and community. And a lot of these racist attacks are resulting in severe injury and death. Here in San Francisco, where I live, in New York, Los Angeles, it's absolutely disgusting. And the thing that makes it absolutely disgusting in particular is, hey, look, all right, if some bad guy wants to come after me, hey, I'm 41, like I'm like able and capable, but the vast majority of these attacks against Asian Americans are against the elderly. And that is like the bottom of the barrel of any society, right? If you go after the elderly or like young children, that is it's just despicable, and it's Chris, been infuriating.
We're running out of time. Can you stay for the Shover Drive for a bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be right back on the Gun Shop Show.
Kids are curious by nature. Do your part to prevent unwanted tragedy from striking in your home by doing these simple tasks. Consider gun locks and/or gun safes for storage of firearms. Don't leave your guns unattended where children could reach them. Discuss with your children the rules of firearm safety. Sign your kids up for hunter safety classes. Firearm safety in the household is your responsibility. Do your part to prevent unwanted tragedy from striking in your home. For more information, visit JasperCountySheriff.org.
Buckle up, because belts just got better. With Core Essentials, the perfect fit every time. With 40+ sizing positions. Styles for any situation. Whether in the boardroom crushing sales and taking names, on your next adventure, in the great outdoors, or when you're done for the day and ready to relax. Get your perfect fit with Core Essentials.
The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. What is it? We don't know. The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. Here we go, it's the Gun Shop Show.
Here we go yet again. It is the Gun Shop Show, and this is the portion of the show where we have spent an entire show making an awesome new friend. And then we start the Shover Drive, and they're looking around like,
What did I get in there?
Why did I say yes to this? And who are these people?
And then we lose.
And then we lose that.
Yeah. And we
It's
get blackballed.
never talk to him again.
I mean, it got a little weird with the Vienna sausage thing earlier, but
Weird.
usually it just goes downhill from that sort of marker. So we'll see where it goes. But before we get too far off the rails, I want Chris, if he would, to... and by the way, this is Chris Cheng, the History Channel's Top Shot Season 4 champion, gun rights advocate.
Whoa, yeah.
Oh my God.
You
don't want that attached to you.
What's going on?
Enemy.
We told you it went off the rails, man.
Yeah, this is where we flip the script and lie about you. No,
Chris
he's the
Cheng
enemy.
is a white guy coming on to talk about gun control. Like,
Yeah. If you're listening on the audio only, we have a very straight white guy, and it's talking about gun control. That's one advantage, when you get the audio only, we can lie to you. We've been telling our listeners Logan is really handsome since the beginning of this show.
I know.
We've got to stand.
They're finally catching on.
Okay. This gets serious for a second. You were actually making a very important point, one that is just befuddling to me. I don't understand this trend. I honestly didn't know if it was real the first time I heard about it. Clearly, you know that it is, and that it's an important one. Mm-hmm. And that is this trend of violent attacks on Asian Americans. It's happening. Do we have a theory on why?
Yeah, I have a theory, and I have a feeling a lot of listeners are not going to like what I think is one of the primary causes, which is President Trump and a lot of his inflammatory language over the past year, using the phrase China virus and Kung flu. It contributes to this negative attitude, right? This negative perception towards Asian Americans. Now, I know it's a little bit of a leap, right, to say, okay, right, the president was saying, negative things about Asian Americans. Now, clearly he wasn't advocating, right, for anyone to attack Asian Americans. But this is the thing about language, right? It's when we start dehumanizing people, right, with language that is intended to mock or degrade or to otherwise make them the other, right? When we make people the other, there are some elements of society that then say, hey, it's okay then for me to go commit crimes, right, against whatever the other are, because they're silent, they're quiet, they're marginalized. Nobody will care if I, attack them. Now, most rational people, right? I'm not talking about rational people, right? So, okay, if you hear President Trump say China virus, right, a rational person will say, okay, like the virus, right, originated from China, right? This isn't a racist thing, right? So I'm not talking about like the rational people, right? We're talking about the small percentage of irrational people who are the criminal elements that go off and then use that sort of not as justification, but it's almost like fuel, right? To go commit crimes. So where I think this comes to is, look, if I were to tell you that there was any remote chance that phrases like China virus and the Kung flu could even remotely result in violence against a people, I would hope that a rational person would say, okay, look, I may not like fully understand like why China virus might translate into violence, right, against Asian Americans, but I'm telling you it's happening. And I'm begging and imploring anybody that's willing to listen to just stop using that language. Because some of this, sure, it's like sticks and stones, right? May break my bones kind of thing. Yeah. But this isn't about feelings, right? It's like I have thick skin. Like my feelings aren't like that hurt. But it crosses a line when people actually start to get injured, actually start to get killed. And in a lot of these racist attacks, they are racist, right? So it's not just like crimes of opportunity and the victim just happens to be Asian, right? These criminals are actively saying things like, go back to China, go back to where you came from, or or worse, right? Literally using anti-Asian racial epithets, right? So a lot of these attacks are very clearly racist. And the more that we use language that normalizes, racist language, it gives some of these criminals what they think is permission to go hurt, injure, and kill and attack Asian Americans. So, and again, the president's language isn't the only cause, but it is one of the very top of mind recent, right? It's why is the attacks increasing recently over the past year? And it's look, it's the pandemic, it's some of this racist language, and it's just got to stop.
So there's a few things I want to make a note of is, of course it's not the majority of any political following, but there becomes this hyper, and I don't know if it's born out of our tribalism, I believe that this side is right and that side is wrong, that they gravitate toward aggressively held opinions that go past even what the political leader has ever advocated for, but it's still dangerous. On the Republican side, we all made fun of the lady who was like, oh, Obama won tonight, I'm never going to have to pay my mortgage again. And we all laughed at her because that's just absurd. But so she took something and re-engineered it into whatever she wanted it to be. So if you take this very borderline things, people defended Trump saying he just tells it like it is, right? You're a snowflake. And I've even been told, borderline things happen on our pages for the Gun Shop Show. And I say, no, this is not going to be allowed. We're not going to talk like that. And they're like, oh, well, what are you, a snowflake liberal? Which, by the way, I've been called before. The article in the Joplin Globe that came out when the election was happening, and I said, Trump's not our savior. Trump doesn't believe in the Second Amendment like we do in Southwest Missouri. He grew up a child of a billionaire. He didn't go out hunting in the woods all the time. So use caution. I hope he's pro Second Amendment, but we'll see. And the people that came out and were like, you're a dirty liberal and I'm never shopping in your store, was extreme. But it is so essential in the gun community that we, and I'm not talking through government intervention. I'm not talking about through even platform censorship. But we as a culture spot that, point it out, and say, that is not welcome here. Get the heck out of here. I think of the gun show as a physical representation of that. So you go to a gun show and anything goes. You got the militant militia guys, you've got, a stack of scopes, you got a stack of ammo, you got a stack of targets, all this looks cool. You got the anarchist cookbook, and I'm not even against there being a book of how to build crazy stuff in case the world goes sideways. But when I get to that fourth or fifth table and it's a racist sign, I think it's so important for us as gun dealers, as patrons of the gun show, to be like, dude, get out of here. Put that away. Put the social pressure on our own community, because there are some people that those are deeply held beliefs, right? But there's also this segment where, I'm against these guys, so I'm going to be a little edgy because you can't tell me what to do. And they don't even mean it.
Rebel for the sake of rebellion.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know what Trump's intentions are. I strongly doubt he's like, oh, I'll make these comments and then maybe there'll be violent encounters. I don't think that. I think he thinks, I'm saying this thing that gets me a lot of mileage. I'm bold by willing to say something borderline here. And I think that a lot of...
He's a provocateur. All right,
Yeah.
He's made a name for himself by giving everybody nicknames, and and a lot of them are catchy, and he's a showman. I think at the end of the day, right, he's a showman, and again, I don't ascribe directly, like I don't think President Trump was encouraging anybody to go and attack Asian Americans, but it's sort of like, it's just unintended consequences, right? And my point is that the things that we say often, I mean, they're going to have consequences, right? And you may intend for one thing to happen, but something else may happen also. And if that other thing is a bad thing, right? If it's a bad thing, even if you didn't intend for it to be a bad thing, if you can stop or reduce the bad thing by changing whatever you're saying or doing, then I don't know. I hope rational people would understand that very simple connection. And you don't need to dig into your personal beliefs and dig in and hold fast, because it might result in somebody getting hurt or killed. So I hope that makes sense and resonates with some listeners.
Well, I don't think Trump seemed to grasp, or he refused to grasp that, while it might be funny and witty to him to say things like China virus, who he's giving power, or not really power to, but who he's enabling to go out and cause violence. I mean, if he had those things like that wouldn't be said. Or the events of, what was it, January 6th? I forget the date that the Capitol was stormed. Events like that, I mean, people are listening and they're acting. It may not be you where you're like, oh, no one's doing anything like that. No one's out there doing that. I support my president. And then he says things like China virus and there's an increase in violence against Asian Americans. I mean, it's probably not that direct, but very well could be. Who knows?
I think it's important for us as advocates of self-defense to highlight this is a real trend. Why? We have theories, and I think that they're probably very traceable. But regardless, if I am a self-defense instructor in a city, and I have this same thing for me. When I'm teaching a class, I address the women. And I say, you know what? The unfortunate reality is you're statistically more likely to be targeted for violent crime than a man. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't true, but it is true. You are more likely to be attacked and have to defend your life than a man is. So, as self-defense experts, now's the time to say, if you are an Asian American, everybody should always be vigilant. Everybody should always be ready. But this is a real thing that you need to add to your awareness, and you need to be prepared for. I doubt, Chris, you would advocate for Asian Americans to be living in a cloud of fear and think that all their fellow citizens are out to get them. But like every self-defense scenario, we don't plan for the majority of the good people. We plan for that one bad guy.
Yep. And I think a lot of Asian Americans are literally, their sense of security is being shattered. And I mean, for me, I sort of have always lived in the reality that, hey, like I live in a major city. My situational awareness levels are basically always active. But I think your average American in San Francisco, and especially Asian American residents, always thought, I can just walk around the neighborhood and not have to worry about who's around me or what potential threats are there. But with these attacks, are literally happening almost every day. I mean, I have social media feeds where I'm following reporters who are reporting out on these attacks, and a lot of Asian Americans are now thinking about, hey, do I need to go learn how to shoot? Do I need to purchase my first firearm? And that's where AAPI Go, that Asian American gun owners group that I mentioned, right? We're starting that because there is a hunger for information, right? For learning. So Asian Americans, right, historically have some of the lowest percentage of gun ownership, right? I mean, we're literally the lowest out of all the racial demographics. Asians are the lowest percentage of gun owners. So there isn't that kind of pre-existing institutional knowledge within the Asian American community of how do I even learn, where do I go shoot? can I rent a gun? Do I need to sign up? Do I need a license? Do I need a this? Do I need a that? What if I want to go buy my gun, right? That's very different in California than it is in Missouri, than it is in New York. So we're starting AAPI Go as a way to educate, right, that first time either gun owner or someone who just wants to learn how to go shoot. How do you do that safely? In asking that question, is a firearm going to be a good tool for me in my self-defense toolkit? And let me be very clear about something. Like, I don't think guns are for everybody, right? I mean, there's clearly some people who either are not skilled enough or who aren't willing to put in the training and put in the time, right, to safely handle a firearm. You can't just go to the gun store, buy a shotgun, and all of a sudden you're going to be safe.
Yeah, it's like that's not how it works. There's some people who shouldn't drive a car. Like, if they don't want to learn, and I've tried to teach people to drive before that are like, I'm just going to turn here. And I'm like, no, it's not okay for other people. And I've been around gun owners who don't have muzzle discipline, and they don't follow the rules. And again, that's where we need to apply our pressure within the community to keep those people like, hey, look, I'm all about gun ownership, but you have to get your stuff together if you're going to be shooting a gun around me or carrying a gun around me. I want to go back.
Yeah, let me tell one story. Yeah. Let me tell one story that I think really highlights. So it's an example where someone should not buy a firearm. I mean, I actively told them you should not buy a firearm. So what happened was, one of my former Google colleagues, right, he was dating a girl down in Mountain View, which is like a 40-minute drive between San Francisco. And so he lived in San Francisco. She lived down in Mountain View, right? So he was only occasionally, right, like they were right staying at each other's places depending on what day of the week. And sometimes, right, they were not at each other's, they were staying in their respective places. She had an experience where there was a prowler who, peered into her window and like tapped on the window, and it was like, midnight. It was creepy and scared the heck out of her. So he was considering getting a firearm for her. And we went through the whole conversation of, pistol, rifle, or shotgun. We sort of said, okay, maybe a shotgun. And how the conversation ended, though, was I said, she's going to need to go through training and some basic training, right? It could just be like a half-day course or maybe just a few hours, cost you a few $100. And he goes, I don't think she would be willing to go through the training. And I was like, okay, well, so help me understand, like if you got her a shotgun, like how would she be able to then effectively use that if someone ever broke in? And he goes, well, I was imagining that if she had her place broken into and I wasn't there to help protect her, that she could get the shotgun. And I can't believe he literally said this. She could get the shotgun, curl up into the corner and hold the shotgun just up. She just hold it up in the air and like hug it, like hug the shotgun. Curl it up in a ball in a corner. I'm like, no. Like
I know. Turns out that's not how shotguns work.
That's not how shotguns work.
Yeah, I remember an adult. This is on the same topic that was around my parents, and I was a kid, and I remember him saying, I didn't even need to teach Linda how to shoot. He's like, because you know why? And he's waiting. Everyone's got the pause they want to hear. He's like, because that it's the scariest sound in the world. I'm like, no, you're going to get Linda killed. And I'm a kid thinking, if I break into your house and I hear, I'm like, okay, it's me or you. There better be some firepower on the other end of that. But that goes back to the point that I was going to circle back to is the cultural misunderstanding of guns and how if we don't come from a gun background, how we can believe things like that. Like a gun is like a magic accessory in a video game. Like if I have this, it's an extra life and it gets me out of everything. I don't even know how to use it. I just press a button and now I have a gun, and so nothing can touch me. I've had the same thing. We did a home defense class and we talked about home security systems, and I'm halfway into an hour on selecting the right home security system, and some guy's sitting in the back like all disagreeing, he's got his arms folded up, and he's like, first of all, I'll keep a 44 Magnum under my pillow. I don't need no ADT. I'm like, first of all, if you're asleep, with the most irresponsible way to store a gun under your pillow, and a bad guy makes it all the way into your house and it's standing over you while you're asleep, it doesn't matter how much firepower you have. But people have that misunderstanding about guns. But I wanted to go back to, you said Asian Americans at a record pace are thinking for the first time, do I need a gun? And every time after a shooting, the news media calls me, and I have this advantage and disadvantage. None of my competitors will talk on the phone to our regional news sources, so they always call me. I'm like, okay, I'll go on TV for free and stand behind the counter of my gun store anytime. But they call me and they're like, okay, so there was a shooting. You know, it doesn't matter what it was, whether it's Sandy Hook, whether it's the Pulse shooting. They call me and it's 3 or 4 days after, and they're like, Mr. Bruton, owner of Liberty Tree Guns, after the shooting, are sales up? And I'm like, yes, they're up. And they're like, aha, got you. You are benefiting from this shooting. And they think there's some sort of nefarious connection between me and the uptick of gun ownership after a tragedy. And I always have to tell them, I hate, because I stand out here every day and tell you gun ownership is essential in a free society. Gun ownership is essential, or at least the premise of defending yourself on any level, whether it's with a gun, whether it's by getting in better physical shape so you have the means to do it, whether just thinking at a heightened level of awareness so that your self-preservation is on your radar on a daily basis. All of those things, I'm out here every week advocating for it. And I hate that it takes someone's personal closeness to a tragic event for them to make that decision, because I want them to do it ahead of time. I don't want them to wait till the 11th hour to understand and try to learn and catch up. But I'm glad that the one silver lining in these tragic events is that it is the turning point for someone before they have been personally attacked to understand and embrace gun ownership. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, and I didn't know that specifically, that gun ownership is very low among Asian Americans. I'm sure that there are all sorts of cultural influences that lead up to that. You know, I'm sure that hand-to-hand self-defense in the form of martial arts is more prevalent among Asian Americans than it is among hillbilly Americans like myself. So I was brought up, guns are sort of a built-in cultural thing that we have, and it sounds like maybe not always the case among Asian Americans. Do you have any theories on why that is true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before going into that, I think one encouraging fact that's happened over the past year is that Asian American gun ownership has increased by 43%, which is a huge jump. When we're seeing, you know, Asian Americans flocking to gun stores in droves. So it's not just, you know, people wanting to learn how to shoot, but they're literally, yeah, like, you know, crushing the gun stores, right, to go purchase, you know, firearms and ammunition. So as to, you know, theories about why gun ownership is the lowest amongst the Asian demographic, because I think a lot it has to do with attitudes about guns that are basically being imported from Asian Americans' country of origin. So, right, this blanket term Asian, right, is huge, right? There's Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Filipino, Koreans, right? So the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. And they all do not share the same attitudes, right, about firearms ownership. So I'll use two examples. The first one is the Philippines. And so Filipino Americans actually have, I think, higher gun ownership rates. In my home gun club in Richmond, California here, there's a whole Filipino clique of gun owners. And so what I'm getting at is in the Philippines, there is a pre-existing notion of personal firearms ownership. So if you're a Filipino who's immigrating to the United States, you're more than likely going to already have this concept of personal firearms ownership in your head. Contrast that with China, right? In China, there is no concept of personal firearms ownership. The communist government basically represses the people, right? Because, oh my gosh, right? God forbid you put firearms in people's hands, right? That the people would rebel.
And
so from a Chinese, right. So from a Chinese citizen's perspective, they often see firearms as tools of government repression, right? That guns are for the military, the Chinese military, for Chinese law enforcement. They're used to keep people silent. They're used to keep people in line, right, with the Communist Party. So they have these negative perceptions, which, right, I can understand, like, right, if you grew up in a country where guns were just used to keep you down and to repress people. Well, when you come to the United States, like, why would you think any different until you start learning, right, and reading and listening and understanding and going to try out, right, a firearm. So I'm a second generation, Chinese American. My father served in the United States Navy, and that was his introduction to firearms. So quickly, like, that was my path. But the low gun ownership rates is because we just don't have as deep of a family tradition, right, in America of multiple generations of gun ownership. But right, in my family, it started with my father. Right now, I'm a second generation Asian American gun owner. If I have children, absolutely, right, I'll be teaching my kids how to shoot. And like all American families, like, that's how traditions, right, start and they continue. Is right, we all take it upon ourselves to educate, teach, and embrace, right, these amazing experiences and freedoms that we have in our country.
It's interesting you point that out. I notice a lot of Mexican-American immigrants are in a similar way. So they view the two sort of people that, groups of people that have guns are the Mexican government and the drug dealers and cartels. So it's kind of, they kind of get the appeal because they've been in this torn country where, like, you don't want to be the only guy not with the means to fight back, but then at the same time, it's mostly thugs and mostly the government, so you might be a bad person. And so those are all hurdles that we don't face as Americans, especially if we come from a demographic where it's not that way. But you see it, travelers, we're on a major highway, and every now and then we'll have someone. And, we have a normal storefront door, right? Like, you walk up to it and you pull it open and you walk in. Well, we've had people before, and oftentimes it's just a regular looking white guy, and he knocks. I'm like, what the heck, dude? It's 11:30. Just walk in. Like, why are you knocking? 2 or 3 or 5 people have walked in front of you. What are you doing? And so you just kind of stand there waiting on him to come around, and then finally he picks his head around the corner and he's like, are we allowed to be in here? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Come here where I can hear you. Come on in, buddy. And then, he's from the UK, and he's like, anybody can walk in here. I'm like, walk into a public store? Yeah, like, yes, you can walk in here. But to him, that's not just, they don't know. That hasn't been part of their upbringing there. It's not ingrained in what they're used to. So they think, because they have a very restrictive policies in their government, maybe there's a rule. Maybe I got to have a license to even walk across this room and look at stuff. And then when you invite him in, and you're like, no, come in here, man. He's like, can I touch one? Like, you can touch 50, dude. You might not be able to buy one if you're here on a visa, but you can hold them. And they're like, if it's not too much trouble, could me and my mate hold one as if we're in a film? And I'm like, yeah, you can do it. Let's take a picture, man. And this is the whole highlight of their vacation. And all they did was pose with guns. But now they see, okay, I don't know how I thought gun owners were. I certainly don't know how I thought a Missouri bearded hillbilly gun shop owner would act toward me, but he was cool. And he let me take a picture, and he didn't make fun of me for the fact that I didn't know anything about guns and that I thought they were a novelty. And now he maybe just be an inch closer to, maybe he would shoot one now that fear is diminished a little bit. So I think that for us here in our comfortable Southwest Missouri closeness to gun ownership, we lose track of the fact that that's not true everywhere in the world, and not even true everywhere in our great country.
My first experience with that was we had some folks from Australia come through the gun store. It's been a while. They were on a tour of the, Route 66. And they came in and they were, it was almost like you experienced. Like they wanted a photo op, like, oh, crikey, is that an AR over there? And we're like, yeah, you want to see it? And they're looking at it. But even with this show, we've talked to folks from the Netherlands. We've talked to folks from the UK. And yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, I don't know. It's phenomenal how we are we've normalized so much of it in our area. We need to continue to normalize that across this country. And with the uptick in gun ownership across the aisle with liberal gun owners and the group that Chris was mentioning, I forget what it was called, AAPI Go.
AAPI Go.
Yeah, I mean, there's been an uptick in gun ownership in the Asian community, in the LGBTQ community. So, I mean, it may be a little while, but it could be 10 years and it'll just be normalized across even the political spectrum. I mean, that's just my, what do you call that, optimism speaking out more than anything. But I'd like to see a day where we can all be 2A advocates.
I think that
I love it. And I've got to wrap things up. I got to get to my next business meeting. But if I could take a moment to reply to Trevor and Eli, your comments. I think those are both just great stories. And I think what really stood out to me is how you both understood that these first impressions are really important, right? You had foreigners, right, coming into your store and interacting with them. And I think whether you are an instructor or a gun store owner, I've heard, I think, too many stories on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Where a prospective new gun owner comes in, they're not treated with respect. They're sort of looked at as like, oh, why don't you understand, how certain things work? And then, right, that sour experience stays with that person forever, right? And then we've lost someone. Yeah. And I think it's really important for all of us to remember what it was like to not know anything about firearms, and that firearms are scary for a lot of people, right? And I think that's understandable. If you don't understand what firearms are about, if you just see death and destruction all the time, when they walk into a gun store, like they're gonna be crapping their pants. Right. That's really scary. Like the fact that it literally takes effort to cross the threshold, right? Eli, your story, right? Of like that Brit who could barely cross the threshold of your store. Like that's how so many first time, gun owners are. And I love that you treated this, this person with passion and sympathy, and also just talk to them in just a normal, respectful manner. And I hope we see and encourage, right, more of that in our gun community peers.
I think so too, and I have a point on how we can grow that, and I know you need to go, so I want to make sure we leave our audience. Tell us once again your social medias, anywhere that you want to direct our listeners. I know some of them are going to want to buy your book, so tell us one more time how to find you, how to find your book, and the things you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for social media people, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. My handle's at TopShotChris. You can also follow me at my website, topshotchris.com. My book, Shoot to Win, book for beginner shooters. It's on Amazon and anywhere else books are sold. And then if you're interested in learning more about the Pink Pistols, that is a pro-2A, pro-LGBT gun rights organization. And then finally, for the Asian American community, AAPI Go stands for Asian American Pacific Islander Gun Owners. It's aapigo.org for our website, and you can volunteer, sign up, and learn more.
Chris, it's been a ton of fun. We've been all over the map on topics, but your personality and charisma across these topics is very appreciated, and we thank you so much for becoming a friend and everything that you do for the Second Amendment.
Thank you so much. I really had a great time chatting with you guys. We definitely ran the gamut of Vienna sausages, Microsoft Excel files, pinky identification. Yeah, the important things in life.
Well, we'll hope you come back and join us once again on the Gun Shop Show.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'd love to come back.
Thanks,
man. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. So, a ton of fun. I don't want to lose this thought, though.
Don't lose it, dude.
I know that a lot of us as gun owners feel like we're on the verge of losing this right? Like the next chapter politically involves either a very nasty uphill battle politically or possibly a bloody civil disruption over the Second Amendment. And I think that is a very real concern. I understand why we feel that way. And some of you as listeners of the show, I know a lot of you are right-leaning, right? Like you support President Trump and you may come from a Christian background where you think being homosexual is wrong and that we should treat those people with some reservation. I know most of you don't want to treat people badly, even if you hold those beliefs. So you might be wondering, like, why does the Gun Shop Show keep having on these people who seem to be on the outskirts of gun ownership? It's because this right and this tradition and this culture that we share around guns is either a couple generations away from expiring or a couple generations away from flourishing. And if we stand around in an echo chamber of people who look like us and sound like us and believe like we do and were brought up like we were, guess what? Those numbers are shrinking. They're shrinking demographically. By the time I'm an elderly man, a white guy with blue eyes is going to be a rare thing, right? By the time my kids are grown, it's going to be a rare thing. That's just the trends of the population and demographics that are growing. So we have this moment in time, this chapter in history where these cultures can adopt, and then they haven't. Chris broke it down for various reasons. They haven't adopted gun ownership. But there's a lot of positive things about the cultural influences of these different segments of what is now becoming American society. There's a lot of, I feel like we can't even talk about sometimes cultural differences, the way that, without feeling like we're steering into stereotypes or over categorizing people, but it's just true. Like, Jewish Americans have a different, typically, family demographic in the way that their families are involved in their lives throughout the chapter of their lives.
Yeah.
You look at trends among family hood and fathership among Hispanic Americans versus Black Americans. Those are two different things. And there's like really positive things that happen within those cultures. You know, the stereotype that Asians are smart, and that they excel at scholastic and academic things are sometimes just stereotypes, but they're also positive things that come out of Asian American culture when it comes to discipline and habits. And so rather than sitting around in this cultural, well, you know, my tribe is diminishing and there's all these segments of people that disagree with me politically, so I'm just going to get angry and defensive and just say, well, I'm ready to go down shooting. Or we can say, don't we want this culture of a disciplined family behavior that comes from Asian Americans? Don't we want safe gun ownership and marksmanship and safe gun storage and self-defense? Like, Asian Americans understand and embrace the premise of self-defense through martial arts tradition, right? Like, we mostly see it in movies if we didn't grow up doing martial arts, but it's taught, it's interwoven in martial arts. Be ready, be capable, be fearless when it's time to defend your life, but use it only for good, right? Don't pick a fight, but if one comes to you, use everything I've taught you to win. Doesn't that sound a lot like what we believe in the gun world?
I agree.
Isn't that what we were taught growing up? Here, have a gun, take it out, use it for sport, use it for enjoyment, use it for this, but never use it the wrong way. Always be the good guy with the gun. That is not a huge leap for some of these other cultures. But if we just look at our differences, the things we don't like, things that are unfamiliar, things that we view as negative in another demographic, and we're scared of that and scared to have a conversation with them, we don't have a chance to preserve this tradition of the Second Amendment and gun ownership in the way that we've enjoyed it. We don't have a chance. If we think that gun ownership is just for straight white guys who believe in hunting and fishing and shooting at the government if they get evil, we're just going to be extinct, right? Like, there's not going to be enough of us politically to preserve this thing we believe in. And if this thing that we believe in is bigger than one human being, if it's bigger than our belief system, if it's bigger than our tradition, we can still hold our tradition and cherish it. We can know that sportsmanship and hunting and all of these things, that maybe those elements don't always cross over to other cultures. Maybe it's primarily a self-defense thing for a lot of Asian Americans and not a hunting and conservation tradition. That's okay. We still need advocates for the Second Amendment on whatever platform it is. And then if there's other people who hunting and conservation is their thing, they come from a country where hunting was part of their culture. I'm learning that about the Philippines. I have a friend who lives there, and there's all these interesting things that are different in the Philippines than they are in other Asian countries. So, he's pointed out and he's showed me pictures. He said, I really laughed. These are just, I met a country girl today, and he tells me about it. He says, just like meeting a cowgirl or a country girl from a farm, but rather than pigs and corn, it's bananas and mangoes or whatever it is, and they work on the farm, and they are more approachable and more friendly than people who live in the city. And we have to understand those differences. We have to appreciate them. I think that's one great thing about travel, and one great thing about discussions like we had today. It's really hard to assume that we're against somebody when we get to know them and understand what motivates them as a person and what shaped them as a person.
I agree, man. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not 100% concentrated white guy. I am a melting pot. I have lots of different ancestors that are from different places inside of me. So it's safe to assume that in the future we'll continue that trend. It will continue to be a melting pot of genes and ideologies, et cetera, so on and so forth. So to your point, Eli, if you just sit around thinking that, team blue-eyed, blonde-haired white guy, straight white guy is going to win the overall government oppression game, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So you might as well team up with other people who have similar ideologies with regards to, self-defense and preserving the Second Amendment, etc. Grow that team and just be the melting pot.
I agree totally. And imagine the look on their faces. Like, so for me, party politics sort of famously not been involved. People will notice. You go on my page, you go on the fan group of the Gun Shop Show, and you get really party driven. You notice I never respond. That's not my motivation. But I understand it, and I do understand, and I am involved in politics on the real world level, right? Not this sort of consumer grade, make a Facebook post, I've done my activism for the week.
Right.
But real world, make a difference. Politics. Imagine. So like I'm gonna speak to that person that does feel that way though about party politics. Imagine, rather than alienating these other demographics, we win them over on the Second Amendment. They may be still sitting on the other side of the aisle in terms of blue and red, right? They sit over there for whatever reasons, whether we relate to them or not, whether it's economics and taxes, whether it's gay rights, whether it's pro-choice, all of these things that may be deal breaker issues for us politically. But imagine when it comes to that gun control vote and all of these little segments that the Democrats have counted in the bag already stand up to join us on the topic of guns. Imagine that moment when they think they have Black Americans, but we have KD. Dixie. I should be able to remember that. Kevin Dixie.
Yeah, I got it wrong with Dixon earlier. I'm sorry.
I corrected you.
When Kevin Dixie has built a following of Black Americans who advocate for not only positive things within their community, but gun ownership, right? Imagine that when we have Chris Cheng and him and all of the people that appreciate the things about him stand up to join us. Or the gentleman from Liberal Gun Owners,
Randy Meehan.
Yeah, so Randy Meehan, he has a little more of the straight white guy thing, but he's very liberal on other political things. But imagine when he stands up and some of his buddies join our cause. We have to win on this topic if we're advocates for it, right? And if we believe, and I think most people do, that this issue of individual right to self-defense and individual gun ownership is transcendent of other issues of the day. Like, I'll debate with you whether or not nuclear power plants are a good idea for the earth, right?
Yeah.
I can take it or leave it, but at the end of the day, I'm never going to feel the same way about that topic as I do the Second Amendment. And I don't feel like it's foundational to the human experience like the right to self-defense is. So we have to take that, put it on a pedestal, and have the conversations with the people that can change. We can stand around and talk in a room of people that already agree with us, and I don't know what good it does us.
Doesn't do any good. You got to talk to the people who disagree with you, and that's why we are bringing together as many people in the 2A community as possible to show that it's not just one brand, it's everybody. Groups of minorities, or minority groups, I guess I should say, are coalescing around the Second Amendment as a result of current events.
For sure.
It's pretty impressive, guys, and I'm glad that we got to be a part of it and document it. I mean, I'm not saying it's over. I'd say, if anything, the last year has only really just kicked it. I don't remember what the numbers are with regard to, I don't even know what you would call
gun ownership in general.
Just gun ownership, you know, for people of color, you know, LGBT groups, et cetera, and so on.
So there's been a huge spike in gun ownership in general. And the and not gun purchases. See, that's the big differentiator.
Yeah.
So gun purchases have been going up every year. But what's really, really interesting is until 2020, the rate of likelihood that an American individual owned a gun at all had not hardly changed since the 50s. So about 48 to 49% of Americans own one or more guns all throughout our history until last year, which is shocking because, you know, you can sort of accidentally own a gun in Southwest Missouri. It's hard to imagine that more people own 0 guns than own a gun at all nationwide. But that's, again, because we have a skewed view on what culture is. You know, around here, if you imagine from the perspective of a bad guy, you're going to kick open a front door. I'm pretty much banking on somebody having a gun in that house.
Yeah. Right.
Regardless. I'm talking old ladies by themselves. I'm talking everything from people who have their concealed carry license to just people who got an old breakover shotgun from their uncle and they don't remember how they got it, but it's there. So up until 2020, that same rate existed. The only difference, and then people are like, well, then why is the gun industry booming? The likelihood of you owning more and more guns went up every year.
Yeah.
So in, I don't remember, decades ago, the average was like 1.3 guns per household that owned a gun, which meant a lot of people only had one gun in their house. And a few people had more, and that's what brought the average up. Now, and this is really, really crazy, the average is over 8 guns per gun owner. The average. That means for every guy that has one, there's some dude out there with 350.
Right.
And
a lot of guns.
That's why there's been room industry-wise, and you guys probably don't care about this demographic as our listener, but that's why there's been so much more gun industry, because rather than there being 200 models of guns, which literally in the 70s, that's all there was, to thousands of models and varieties and calibers and offerings and colors and all of this stuff. It's not unlike the beer experience. You went into a liquor store in the 1960s or 70s and there's like 4 kinds of beer, right? There's like Pabst Blue Ribbon, Budweiser, Coors, and maybe like Miller, and that's it. And that's all you got. That's all you could buy. And there might be somebody somewhere making some specialty beer that was a family tradition from Germany, but you could not go to the shelf and buy it. And it's been the same thing with guns. Like Smith & Wesson made revolvers, right? Pretty much no one else did. There's a handful of shotguns, like Browning shotguns were a thing and Remington shotguns were a thing, but there wasn't all of the Black Aces Tactical and this import and Benelli and Savage and all of these things, and but what's really interesting is that trend was happening. So people that already bought guns were buying more and more guns, and they were into guns socially, they were into guns from a hobby aspect, they were into customization of guns, they were into building guns. But it was an echo chamber. You either, I believe in guns and therefore I have one, which morphed into I believe in guns and therefore I have 8, to now for the first time in 2020, and a lot of our community just made fun of these people who woke up to the fact that I need a gun to defend myself because the government can't. It's one beautiful thing about the speed in which we get information from the internet and video evidence from the internet is there was a time in the past where maybe the media and the government could just convince you, you don't need a gun, we'll take care of you. And if you didn't live and weren't in a city eyewitnessing the fact that that wasn't true, that might not change your opinion socially, but all eyes were on these rioting cities.
Yeah, it's almost like the government and the media this time around was trying to make the argument unintentionally that we should be gun owners.
They were straight up saying like, look, oh, good luck. We're out there doing whatever we can, but you're on your own.
Yeah.
And that they didn't mean to say, get ready for a rodeo, cowboy, because it's all on you. But that's what was perceived by the public. So they went out and in the 11th hour tried to get a gun and tried to learn how to use it. And all we can do, though, is take that initial moment and say, all right, get on in here. But there's some stuff you need to know. This isn't a today only thing. This is something that you're going to have to hold dear and treat with respect. With great power comes great responsibility, and you're welcome in here as long as you're willing to do those things. It's kind of like, I will teach you how to drive a car as long as you promise to be as safe as within your means, not disregarding all the life around you.
What you just described sounds like just community, you know? Like it may be two parts of a community that didn't necessarily intermix, but when the moment came, one part of that community had the other part of that community's back, and it goes both ways. As a matter of fact, it's not just, you know, it's not like 2A advocates or somehow like this higher tier of intelligence that they welcome these other folks in. We're like, well, finally you got around. It's more like, we've been here, we've been holding the fort down, welcome aboard. But, you know, there are other things that in the community where those folks were, you know, at the top of whatever they were doing and advocating for that, you know, the people on this side may not have been privy to or willing to be okay with.
I think the First Amendment is an example of that, you know, where someone who's conservative or gun owner has been censored. And in some cases, it's been First Amendment activists who understand the importance of preserving free speech have went to their defense, even though they might even disagree with them on the Second Amendment. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I think the reason that I might make it sound like, you know, duh, we've been here the whole time knowing this was precious is just because that's been me and that's been my life. Like, I've been out here trying to tell you, get the training, get the license, carry the gun, know how to use the gun, believe in the gun, learn the history of the gun and why that matters. And so when they do finally come over, it is like, oh, now you believe me. But we have to take that moment and put it aside, right? Like, it's better than treating them with disdain because they didn't see your point of view the whole time. You know, it'd be like, to me, if you had a grown child and they're dating someone and you know that they're bad news, right? So you're like, hey, look, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I think this guy you're dating might do you some harm. I really think you should be cautious. Like, you know, it's my life. I'll do what I want. I know, but hey, I'm seeing some red flags based on my wisdom of living a whole lifetime that you haven't lived and understanding people. And then eventually, you know, she comes home with a black eye and she's beat up and you're like, hey, remember what I was saying? You don't go, it's too late now. I already tried to warn you. You're too stupid. You bring them back in with love and say, I'm sorry that you didn't listen to me sooner and you had to get a black eye or something worse before it clicked. We don't rub that in, which is kind of what happened to some extent in the gun ownership. Is people came up and they're like, okay, I need a gun. I don't know what to get. And we're like, haha, all the good ones are sold out. You're stupid.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, you're stupid. It's too late. You know, and there were even people like, I don't want to train people who haven't been pro-gun until now. Well, that's really, really stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You finally got what
it is.
You finally got what you've been saying you wanted this whole time. And yeah, it's going to be rocky. You know, it's awkward to me when I help a Hispanic American whose approach to guns is through this gangster, drug lord, cultural lens, right? Like, he's here because he's curious, but his perception to guns may have been through Mexican pop culture. So he holds up the gun and like, you know, pretends to be a movie star. And I could just be like, oh gosh, this guy's, you know, and push him aside. Or I could be like, hey, look, I know these are cool and you may have seen them here or there. It might make you think of this. But if you want to own one, that's not how it is, right? Like, so I can show him with purpose what is important about gun ownership without throwing aside the things that I might think are different or not cool in a way.
Well, I think what you're describing is just being a good steward of the Second Amendment community. You know, anytime I'm with someone who obviously isn't experienced with a firearm, and it's not like I'm overly experienced, but I at least know, keep your finger off the trigger unless you're ready to use it. You see that happening, you say something.
Yeah. And you know what's weird is I don't really see that in other areas of interest, at least not to the same level, right? So like,
you just mean like advocating as a part of being a part of the group?
Yeah. So what I've generally found is if you've never gone golfing and a group of guys invite you to go, generally they're like, hey, stand like this, hold your hands like that. And you go, oh, I'm terrible, I've never done it. And they're like, it doesn't matter, I remember my first time. And they're cool about it. But for some reason in the Second Amendment, they're like, hey, am I allowed to come in here? Are you allowed to come in here, you idiot? Right. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because there's a deeper cultural connection, so we get like encased in our own beliefs and our own habit of knowing about this, and then become like tribal to people who haven't been in it before now. But we have to break that.
Well, what you're describing to me kind of sounds like generation to generation style mentality, you know, like as people who are younger than us grow up and who are more normalized and, you know, different minorities having equal rights, they're going to be less like that and more like, I would say more like us, you know, just accepting of people.
That is,
you know, someone who's 20, 30 years older than us, you know, when we were kids going to the gun store, like we might have experienced that. But as you've experienced that, there's been a wealth of new individuals opening up to the gun community. You don't want them to walk in and then act that way towards them because you're cognizant of the fact that's not good business. And if you do it, then you're probably going to lose business.
And it's just, yeah, both between it's not good business. It's not a good way to be as a person. It's just not cool to be that way. But, you know, that's something I hadn't really considered. It is somewhat generational because I remember my first job. I'm 16, right? I was a really hard worker. It already, I say my first job. I actually started working when I was 13 on a truck farm, but this is my first, call it professional job, and I worked at a body shop. And one day he takes a car that had just been repaired and says, we need to wash this car, and put it out in front of the shop. And I've got a bucket of soapy water and a hose. And I take the soap and I sort of get most of the car and I start rinsing it off because, you know, I'm thinking car wash. And this is my first job. Like, I'm hustling, I'm moving fast. I want to,
working hard.
I want to be seen as the guy that's trying. And my boss at the time comes over and goes, who taught you how to wash a car?
And you're like,
and now, if I could go back, I'd be like, nobody, asshole. I've never worked at a body shop. So like there was stuff I didn't know about hand washing a car and different materials that you use and the thoroughness with which you have to, you know, like on my radar, I didn't realize every surface of the car has to be physically touched. You know, it's kind of like when you shower, you hit the high spots, you get the armpits and the hair, and you just kind of let the water do the rest of the washing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the approach I took to the car. And then rather than saying, hey, when we wash cars in a professional setting, here's what you do. And he could show me one time, and I'd have been out there hustling, and we'd all been on the same team. But instead, like, he opened with, you're an idiot. And whoever raised you was an idiot, you know? And I think that was a generational thing. Like, that's how they got accepted into their circles, was by being treated like crap at first, and if they hung around, then they could be in. But I don't know that that's a good way to grow a community.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, ironically speaking, it's how secret societies and what do they call the fraternities? That's how they indoctrinate people into their community. Like, if you're willing to go through the hazing, you become a more loyal and more confident, or not confident, but more committed person to the business. Now, I'm not suggesting that that was what the car washing guy was attempting.
Well, kind of.
It was exactly what it was.
If
It
you
was
make
the same trend.
Yeah, if you make it through these trials and tribulations that they put you through, you deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a power to that, which I can understand.
Yeah, you experience this hardship with people. I mean, I recently was reading about this, but it kind of conjured up memories of, you know, wrestling back in the day, you know, and then later on,
Kind of the military.
someone was disloyal to me. Yeah, not disloyal to me in the sense that they were trying to cause harm to me secretly, and I found that out. I'm like, after all we've been through together, like, I have done things. No, I mean, it's going to sound terrible, but like, I've done things with you that I have never done with anybody else. You know? It sounds worse than it is, but you know,
We wrestled
the hardships that we went through. Like, I feel like that created a bond, and the psychology of that, you know, just permeates to the surface whenever I read these stories about how commitment can make you do things that you would never think that you would do. That's why I absolutely refuse to identify with a party for that very reason, because of the fact that if I do, I will open myself up and be accepting of things that I would never normally do or be accepting of or make excuses for, you know?
And it's funny because even when we're aware of that, and I'm probably one of those guys, like, you can't just get me on board for outrage very easily, right? Like, I even have people in my life, they're like, they come to me and they're like, my landlord ripped me off. And they're like, tell me what to do to get back at him. I'm like, well, let me hear the facts first, because you might be wrong.
You're like, that's crazy.
But I have a handful of friends in my life who they could call and be like, stuff's going down and I have an enemy. And I would ask no questions. Like, let's roll. Whatever you need from me, whether it's physical or just like support in any way, just because of all of the experiences we've had together and the, like you mentioned, the trials and tribulations, that has built a situation where we're in it together. So that's a very human thing, I think. And we can have that around the Second Amendment, and it can, I would think, could break down those walls. And it has. I mean, throughout our history, you look at
food and music has been probably some of the forefront of what do you call that? Meddling? No, blending. Two cultures come together.
Yeah, melding. I think.
Melding. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely true. And when you adopt one thing from another culture, it's harder and harder to have bigotry and hate in your heart if you can take on one thing. You know, like, Mexican food is better than the food that culturally would have been in my family, generally speaking. Like, I just like it better. I don't know how that happened, but like, I'm into it. Therefore,
that's how I feel about sushi.
It's that much harder to feel like, well, this demographic of people are bad. Like, they can't be all that bad because they knew how to.
They make a mean chimichanga.
Yeah, it's delicious,
right?
They probably stand to the side and laugh, like, chimichanga. That's just a made up dish.
That's made in Texas.
Yeah, that's not
even Mexican.
But
food.
we'll sell it to you for $7.99.
Oh man, I am the same way, man. And it's funny to me. Thinking about Mexican food always makes me think, like, if I, go to my lady, I'm like, what do you want tonight? And she's like, oh, not Mexican food. I'm like, it wouldn't be Mexican food if we were Mexicans. It would just be food.
That's true. That's true. And it's funny to think a lot of things are like that. Like, my friend was telling me that they wear American ball caps in the Philippines.
Oh, snap.
Like, that's just a hat to us.
Right.
They're like, oh, I'm American. I'm on Grease. Like
I'm on Grease?
Yeah, the musical.
I was like, what? Like the like Crisco?
It's super funny because, like people come here from Sweden and they get in a Corvette convertible and they drive down this highway that the rest of us forgot about 50 years ago so that they can emulate our culture.
Right.
They're like, oh, Route 66 is so cool. Americana, the 50s, motorcycles.
Yeah.
Elvis Presley. And the rest of us are like, oh, that road that runs through Carterville? Like, that's a thing for you guys?
That's a terrible road. You don't want to get on alternate 71.
It's like,
hit that I-249.
You want that 249. I just don't know.
That's premium road, that 249.
It is amazing. And I'm very much in the boiling water of America. I'm the frog in the pot, if you will. I don't really think about that stuff, and getting outside perspective is always such a great thing, man. And it's one thing I've really enjoyed about talking to people outside of our country, getting an outside perspective. But I find it on Reddit as well, people's perception of the United States. But when I found out people were traveling Route 66
as prevalently as they are
for fun, it shocks me a little bit, because that era to me is like, I already appreciated it for what it was. I've moved on. I'm not thinking about it. And now here are people showing up in our gun store wanting to hold guns as a result of Route 66. We have a coffee shop in this town that's got, I don't know, what would you say, probably thousands of pins in it at this point, from people who have traveled to our little bitty town in Southwest Missouri from all over the world. Like literally all over the world.
It blows my mind.
You could spin the globe. That's a real thing. Kids these days probably don't know what a globe is, but you could spin the globe. That's what it's called, right?
The globe. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
That'd be hilarious.
I want to make sure it wasn't like referencing the planet or something.
It'd be really funny if you're like, you can spin that hemoglobin. We just let you roll with it.
That's what it is.
Right, the hemoglobin. But you could spin that thing and just stop your finger on it, and someone from that area has probably been to our amazing little town in Southwest Missouri. It's under. I think it goes. I don't know. Anytime I write about pages or I write content for the gun store or any website for that matter, I always put historic Carthage, Missouri.
Yeah. I just made a listing for an apartment and put historic Carthage, Missouri in there, because there's
a good selling point.
There's this whole little other world. There's worlds within worlds.
Oh man, we're learning about the horse track that was out here. I had a buddy tell me that there used to be some sort of amusement area out between Carthage and Carterville, that there was a train or something that would connect the two. The fact that Garrison Street used to actually have garrisons on both ends of the street. So, I don't know how much of this is actual fact, but the history of this town
is so much.
Amazing. Yeah, dude, I wasn't born here, so I've learned about this stuff as I've lived here. It's pretty surprising how much history and how much what commerce and industry has come through this town. If Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there Carthage marble in Washington D.C.
and primarily the entire Capitol building in Jefferson City is made from Carthage marble?
That's pretty amazing.
Some of the best marble around.
It's some top-notch marble. Ironically, though, none of the marbles are made out of marbles.
Interesting.
All right, what? Excuse me? That's false advertising.
Yeah.
And I want my money back.
Yeah. I imagine that if I lost my marbles, I would get Carthage replacements.
I would. That's top quality marble. And it sounds to me like
be an upgrade, honestly.
We need to start making Carthage marbles.
That's a good idea.
Trademark.
So it's so interesting how simultaneously important our history is, as well as our future, right? So I think we never stop and recognize when the future is here, right?
Right. Because it's always the present.
So, yeah. So, one of the things I saw today that was really remarkable and that I had to stop and smell the technological roses is I feel like things are going to be great when this finally gets here, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And one of those things. Sorry, that was not a. It's just not as cool when you're not coming back from break.
Yeah.
Well, here, hey,
Marco Rubio.
Let's do it right. Coming in on the zip cam.
See how much cooler that is? I just got parched. I'm sorry. So we talk about access to the internet and quality internet. Yeah. And everybody, it seems like for a long time, has been like, oh yeah, Elon Musk gonna fix all that though. Mm-hmm. He gonna put internet in the heavens
everywhere,
and everyone's gonna be able to get it. It's gonna be cheap, might even be free. And
oh snap!
And it was always like, yeah, someday, but for now I got Suddenlink. This morning I wake up and the guy's like, holy, there's a UFO, and he's filming the sky, and there's this like stars in the heaven, 100 streak beeline of what looks like stars, like just as bright as the stars in the sky or brighter, just in unison traveling over the earth.
Was this local, or is this a video that you saw online or was fed to you?
This is a local guy from Joplin.
Oh, okay.
And he's freaking out and doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then people in the comments are like, that's Starlink. Here are some other examples of what those satellites look like in the sky. So it's such a juxtaposition to me to be able to sit here and appreciate the fact that there was a horse racing track in our town.
Yeah.
And Route 66 was this awesome chapter in history, and also be like, we're putting stars that hook us up to the whole rest of the world and the universe in the sky, and they're physically flying over me right now. Like, just what a time to be alive.
What are the chances you think one of those things are going to fall in the sky and hit you?
Probably not likely.
Not likely. I'm not too worried about it.
I'm not stressing about it either.
The crazy thing is we've become so accustomed to these things that we've become almost ungrateful. Like, there's been so many times that I've had like internet issues, and I'm like, that freaking internet again, that mother. Boop, 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 boop.
Call them out, dude.
Right.
Who's your telecom company?
Freaking Mediacom, and they're the worst.
Well, I don't know. I put Suddenlink as the worst.
They're probably equivalent, honestly, in their own ways.
They're the same thing, different name.
Yeah,
that's true.
Suddenly trash.
I played enough dodgeball that I'm not worried.
Oh, you're going to jump out of the way? If you can dodge a satellite.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a satellite. That, or I will carry around another satellite and bump it out,
Oh, yeah.
That's another thing I learned.
Yeah,
You just set it.
If two opposing forces, what is it? If an unmovable force and a something come together, then
it's an immovable object, and
you're good to go.
Here's the thing. I don't know the physics of it, but if dodgeball taught me anything, you can hold one ball, another ball's coming at you. You whack it with that ball, you're not out.
That's true.
I'm feeling a strong dodgeball thing.
And
here.
if you've ever played volleyball, you could probably set that satellite for someone else to smack down.
Well, hey, you better hope I'm nearby because I'm coming to spike it.
Okay.
Dude, apparently, speaking of cultures and stuff, Indian volleyball is not played like American volleyball.
Well, when I've seen them play it, there's like 15 people on each
What's Indian
side.
volleyball?
So last night when I was playing American basketball,
Okay. And what is that?
it's just basketball.
It's like
Oh, okay.
Palestinian basketball.
but
No,
in America.
Let's play with camels.
He can say that.
I can say that because I am the Palestinian thing.
How do you get the camel through the hoop?
It's a big hoop,
Yeah.
and it's sideways.
There's a Bible verse.
And instead
about
of being
that.
like this,
It's a camel
It's
shaped.
easier to get a camel through the hoop of a basketball goal than for a rich man to get in the kingdom of heaven.
Matthew,
It's a little known verse.
Matthew
Amen to that.
11:3.
Yeah. Opinions for
Anywho, in American volleyball, there's a limited number of players, and the object, and I got to play again recently, where I was reminded by it is generally very intentional that you pass to establish a scenario where an attack happens, and you only volley it straight back over. So like, ball comes over on a serve.
Yeah.
Ideally, in the way American volleyball is played, you would do a bump. So first person would underhanded bump it up.
Yeah.
Second person would set it. Third person comes in with the spike, right?
Yeah, and destroys.
And yeah, because then you can choose where you want it to hit. I was shocked that these like 30 guys from India, and I do know that that's where they're from because I actually have that on good authority from some organizers.
Yeah,
I'm not just like throwing all the people that have brown skin that look Middle Eastern into Indian
intense breathing
bucket.
Now,
okay?
you should clarify these are gentlemen from India.
Yes.
Yes.
Not Native Americans.
Gotcha. Following. Track.
Anyway, they serve like this, so throw it up, two fists together, whack the ball.
Okay.
And then they just whack it back and forth over the net with two fists nonstop. Like, there's no passing. And usually there's only a second hit on the net if by accident they don't get the first home run hit over the net. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy, and it seems like it would be a very difficult way to play the game.
It did look disjointed, and it didn't look like as much fun either.
Well, I can kind of see the appeal. Have you ever played like a game where you like have a ball or like a paper ball or something, and you hit it to your friend, and they got hit it back, and the first person that misses it loses?
Yeah. Which I think that's volleyball in general, but I mean, I like the teamwork element.
Yeah, I mean,
guess
setting
can
it
see
up
that.
and then somebody coming in like a superhero and spiking it.
So
that's where the glory is.
I remember in like 6th, 7th grade gym volleyball, we inadvertently did what these guys are doing, which was just like ball's coming, panic, whack it over, have my moment, you know.
Right.
But it was sort of portrayed to us as one, that's not good strategy, and two, it's almost impolite in the fashion of like involve your teammates, use a little finesse, win the game. Don't just whack it over there because that's all the effort you want to put into it. But seems to be maybe just a cultural difference in the way that the game is played.
Most likely. Or
Also,
they're just a bunch of guys who decided they want to play volleyball and don't know how to play it.
That's possible.
Who knows?
But from what I've heard, like that's a big thing culturally to them. And also, though, they were just like good old American sports, getting pissed off at each other.
Talking smack.
Yeah. It was pretty funny.
Gosh, I would love to be a fly on a wall to hear what some of the things they say are.
I was.
You were the fly on the wall?
Well, I was just a guy on the basketball court next door, but
gotcha.
But I heard it all.
Were they speaking English when they were doing it?
Just the F word.
Like fudge, Florida.
No, one of them straight up calling the other one. MFer.
Was he being an MFer?
I don't know. I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
According to the other fella, quite so.
Yeah, if you believe everything you hear very loudly repeated 11 times, yes, he was. All right, I'm getting choked up, fellas.
Yeah, man. We need to wrap it up.
I learned firsthand how satisfying and terrifying volleyball can be. Playing with family. Yeah, I went for the spike, okay? And doing a successful spike is one of the best feelings in the world.
Oh, yeah.
But it is not one of the best feelings when it hits one of your little cousins in the face.
Cousin had it coming.
I told
Just
you.
kidding. If I set this up, would you be able to spike it?
I could.
That was a movie quote, and it fell flat on its
What
face.
movie was that? It doesn't matter.
Meet the Fockers. If I set this up, Fokker, you think you could spike it?
What was it about?
They were playing water volleyball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Robert De Niro asked him that, and he's like, "It'd have to be pretty high, but I'm sure I could." And he's like, "I bet you would, Panama Red." And there was a weed joke in there. But anyway, he spikes it right into the lady's face and busts her nose up, and there's blood everywhere.
It's never a good feeling.
Yeah. I told you that about in Florida, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Somebody got busted in the face.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. When I spiked the ball onto the kid's face.
Yeah.
They were like, lay off the roids, fucker.
Oh, and you didn't get it.
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's excellent.
Right now.
Oh, that's great.
That's a sleeper joke.
Like, what are the odds
I
that
was
you
like,
could get educated? Yeah. I hate it when I figure something else out like
late,
way after it doesn't matter. And
especially when they're jokes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Adios.
Bye. It was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, it was a great time. There it is. That was a great show.
Yeah.
It was good. I enjoyed it.
Enjoy y'all very much. Please go to gunshopshow.com. Please support our sponsors, including U.S. Law Shield. Make sure you get your U.S. Law Shield membership. Use promo code LibertyTree so you can support us, support them, and have the coverage that you need to protect yourself. Legal defense for yourself.
Absolutely. Good stuff. I'm a member.
Get the podcast.
Yep.
At all of the podcast place.
Like Spotify.
And Stitcher.
Pandora.
Apple Podcasts.
Google Podcasts.
Trevor's podcast.
The one that
Player
Joe
FM.
Rogan's on.
Did you guys see that Carol Baskins has her own cryptocurrency now?
I did see
It's called
that.
like Cat.
Yeah.
You guys gonna invest?
No.
I don't know. Though.
No. I think I'm out on the cryptocurrency wave.
Just as a joke.
Meow.